I would like to call this meeting to order. We will start with a moment of silence. At this time, we will stand with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we will do the election of the school board chairperson. Do we have any? Oh, I'm so sorry. Madam Clerk, can we do the roll call, please?
Yes, Dr. Gurley. Mrs. Burns? Here. Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Ms. Dooley?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Present.
Mr. Meyer?
Present.
Ms. Richardson?
Here.
Ms. Torres?
Yes.
And our student rep, Ms. Keithy?
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, at this time, we will do the election of the chairperson.
Dr. Gurley, I would like to move that we elect Ms. Torres as our chairperson for the 24 year.
All right, any other nominations? All right, can I get a second? Any discussion? All right, can we get a vote? All opposed?
Madam
all
Clerk,
in
would you do
favor?
a roll call for this vote, please?
Yes. Mrs. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Dooley?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Torres?
Yes, thank you.
All right, it looks like we have everyone in favor. Congratulations, it's now your meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Gurley, and thank you, everybody else. All right, I will now entertain a motion for vice chair, please.
Ms. Torres, I would like to nominate Mr. Don Morris as our vice chair.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Is there a discussion? Any other motions for vice chair? All right, all in favor, please say yes.
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 Any
Yes.
opposed? Great. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Look forward to serving with you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, next item, I would like to entertain a motion, please, to appoint our clerk and deputy clerk of the board.
Madam Chair, I would like to appoint Miss Julia Green as clerk of the board and Leslie Thacker as deputy clerk.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
So that's the recommendation. I'll do so move. So I'll do the
Okay,
motion
and
and
I'll
then
second.
Ms. Torrance.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, thank you. Appreciate you both. All right. So just real quickly, I do want to thank you all for allowing me to be chair and work with all of you. And I do want to just take a quick moment also to welcome our new cohort of board members. We're very excited and grateful that you all have stepped up and are willing to do this work with us. So we appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you for that. And now we will move on, and I would like a motion for approval of our agenda, please.
I move that we approve our proposed agenda.
And second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you. Next, we're going to move on to comments from members of the community and a slight modification to our agenda this year. We have identified 7.1 as a time for comments from students. Students are welcome to make comments at any point in time, but this is just a little tweak to our agenda and our process, and I've shared that with Ms. Heafy, so that coming forward, students right after school can come up and make comments as well. So if there are any students, which I don't see currently in the media center, they could come at this point. And we'll just move on at this point and go to comments from members of the community. So we do open this up to people who have signed up for in-person comments, and then also we have the option to make comments from Zoom or online. I'll start right now with those who have signed up previously. So our first speaker could be Mr. Derek Hartline. And if you will come to the podium, please. Remember that you're limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. And thank you for being here.
Let's see. Good evening, returning and new board members, Dr. Gurley. My name is Derek Hartline, lifelong city resident, 1517 Antoinette Avenue, Charlottesville. At last month's board meeting, the board voted to allow facilities to be named after people. Given this 180 on renaming from the original motion, I feel it necessary to revisit the name Buford versus Charlottesville Middle School. The process to change the name of Buford did not follow the protocol set in place by the renaming committee, but instead it was solely on Dr. Gurley's request. He left out what Phil Varner had to say about the namesake of Queen Charlotte, for which Charlottesville is named for. In September 2020, Varner published a Changing the Narrative piece entitled The Myth and Reality of Queen Charlotte. In it, he states, quote, the life of Queen Charlotte is the life of Queen Charlotte is the epitome of white supremacy. CCS has been using Varner's work as the only playbook for evaluating who schools are named for, even though it has been proven that much of what he has written maligns former CCS employees that many of our schools are named for. Soon after the name change, the identity of Buford started disappearing rapidly. In a recent survey about the look and feel of Buford, it was stated that the mascot Trojans needs to also be changed because it doesn't build pride for our diverse school community. Where are the findings for such a bold statement? When now current board member Ms. Burns made PTO comments, she referred to the Buford student community or school community as Trojans on social media, and no one ever complained. The coach at my school, LMA's principal, and the division's own supervisor of equity are all graduates of Virginia State University, whose mascot is also Trojans, which stands for pride. So why isn't it good enough for our middle school? Once you've changed the name, mascot, and look at the building, what could possibly be done to erase Buford, anything else? I'm about to tell you what that is. As a Buford graduate, I struggled academically as a teen. It wasn't until I met Joe Westcott, who taught me not only academics for 2 years at Buford, but taught me to also believe in myself as he believed in me. I credit him for helping me to become the teacher I am today. Sadly, Mr. Westcott passed away in 1993 before I could tell him how much his support meant to me. A bench was created as a memorial in his honor, and for decades I have visited when at Buford. To my surprise this summer, his bench went missing at the same time Nielsen started their construction at Buford. In November, I asked the COO what happened to his bench. She said she didn't know where it was. I reached out to the community and found the caring teacher who did the legwork for getting the bench, and she too wants to know what happened to it. Doing away with names, mascots, and now a memorial is like a modern day raising. The community deserves answers. Sadly, it has taken media attention lately to see change. I'm asking the board tonight for 2 things. 1, please get to the bottom of what happened to Joe Westcott's bench memorial and explain what is going to be done to remedy the situation. 2, after the budget is approved, please reassess the entire renaming process with a new perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have signed up Jerry Lloyd.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry McCoy Lloyd. I was a health teacher for 23 years at Buford Middle School, home of the Trojans, from 1980 to 2003. Not only did my students get book learning regarding health, they also got practical experience as well, from hiking to cooking, walking, turkey trots, and activities that help them take pride in their school and very much in their community. Several teachers at Buford were avid gardeners. We, including me, Ava Alderson and Marty Bass, got permission to garden the island in the bus circle. I personally paid for those huge rocks to be delivered and installed. Faculty members and students helped plant grasses, flowers, and bulbs. Many people in the Buford community donated the plants. Even the Department of Parks and Recreation became involved. They provided flowers, bulbs, and mulch to the island for several years. In 1993, Joe Westcott, a beloved science teacher, friend, and faculty member at Buford Middle School, died. Students approached me, Ava, and Marty asking how to honor his memory. We came up with the idea of a memorial garden. We obtained approval from the superintendent's office and members of the Buford community. We had a fundraiser donation process to fund that memorial garden. With the funds raised, we purchased crepe myrtle, Japanese dogwood, Joe's favorite plants, and more importantly, a granite bench engraved with Joe Westcott's name for all to use to sit and reflect. Many was the occasion I witnessed students sitting on the bench during my tenure at Buford. I was brokenhearted on my recent visit to Buford to see the beloved memorial garden destroyed. All trees, plants, and the engraved bench gone. Their beauty, purpose, and memory ripped out. Personally, I and many members of the Buford community would like to know where the bench has gone. Too many people have put a lot of love and work into this memorial. I personally paid the lion's share for that bench. You, as members of the school board, could and should have the common decency to locate this bench and return it to its rightful place as the memorial to a beloved teacher, friend, and Buford Middle School community member. It is extremely disgraceful and very disrespectful what has been done to this memorial garden. If the school board chooses not to return the bench, but definitely knows where it is, I would like to ask for possession of the bench. It would be placed in my personal memory garden in honor of those I have loved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in the media center who'd like to make comment? Please come to the podium, state your name, address, and you're limited to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Gardner, 753 Belmont Avenue. My son Ben is a junior at CHS, and I wanted to say thank you to all of you. Tireless work that you are doing, many hours put in, and I appreciate it very much. I attended the last school board meeting, and Dr. Gurley, I heard your remarks, and I have to say I was very touched. I thought they were very meaningful. They gave me a lot of hope and a lot of optimism for where CHS is headed. Some of the changes that you've already implemented and things that I've seen happen make me feel really good about the future. This next comment is a little oddly placed in terms of timing because 4 of you are new. Congratulations. Now the work begins. I heard Dr. Gurley apologize and take responsibility. And then what I heard from, I think, most, if not all of the board members was, it's not your fault. And it's not, but it is your responsibility. And then ultimately, for the school board, it's your responsibility. But I didn't hear anybody from the school board say, take any ownership. Say, as Dr. Gurley's employer, we are ultimately responsible for supporting him in his role and helping him do his job better. And so you didn't cause the problems that, created all of the nuttiness for the last however many months. But yeah, it's your responsibility to make sure it's being managed well. And the other people sitting with you, it's their responsibility to make sure that you can do your job well. So I'd just like to see that going forward. I haven't heard anybody from the school board like really stressed out or owning any of it. And so as a community member, I think that would be like a good first step to how we move forward with this issue. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. Anybody else here? Again, state your name, address, and your 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. I'm Tom Cormans, 1116 Forest Hills Avenue. And I'm the father of Brooke Cormans, a CHS 10th grader, as well as 2 11-year-olds whom my wife and I hope will be future CHS students. I want to start by thanking the school board and Dr. Gurley for your public service in very demanding and extraordinarily important roles. And especially to thank Mr. Leatherwood for stepping out of retirement to lead CHS through what I think most of us would agree has been a time of crisis. For many parents, teachers, and students deeply concerned about CHS, we saw positive signs and positive momentum at the end of last year. I'm here tonight because I want us to build on that momentum and ensure that it does not subside, recognizing how far we still have to go. CHS has phenomenal and committed, caring teachers, rewarding extracurriculars, engaged students, and it represents many of the best things about our diverse, multifaceted Charlottesville community. That is why I so deeply want to be able to have confidence that it is a place where my child and all her classmates and teachers and other staff can be safe every day through 2024 and beyond. And we are not there yet. Last year, parents and teachers were given several reasons to hope that we were at a turning point. Mr. Leatherwood stepped in as interim principal, and changes were made at CHS that effectively addressed the frequent and violent fights. While a sustainable long-term solution will require more and bigger changes, Mr. Pitt's resignation, the teacher walkout, and videos showing the public some of what was actually happening in the hallways and even in this library successfully drew enough attention to these longstanding problems that they were addressed and the situation improved. One thing that tells us is that these kinds of fights in which students and faculty were physically injured and the associated dysfunction and fear were and are preventable. And then something happened at the last school board meeting in December that the last speaker also referred to and expressed appreciation for, and that's that Dr. Gurley accepted responsibility for these severe problems at CHS and the fact that he and the district did not address them sooner. I and many other parents, teachers, and community members were very grateful to hear this acknowledgement of responsibility and accountability. But in order to continue the forward progress, the school board needs to affirm that responsibility and accountability. We, as parents, teachers, and community members, need to hear clearly that the school board, composed of elected officials representing us, the public, are prepared to recognize Dr. Gurley's accountability going forward and ensure that the forward momentum continues. We know that there are larger problems in Charlottesville and in the world, but we can and must have a safe and functional learning environment in the midst of a very imperfect world. In fact, our ability to make the world a better place depends upon our ability to do that, to ensure that our schools are in upward spirals for our kids and our community, not downward spirals. We cannot afford to equivocate for even a moment about whether or not the district is responsible for the safety of our kids. Taking ownership of the problem is an absolute prerequisite for addressing it. It is important that this school board explicitly recognize where the buck stops. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Moran. I live at 932 Bing Lane here in Charlottesville. I'm a graduate of Venable and Lane High School. And Dr. Gurley, Madam Chair, and members of the school board, I would like to congratulate the new members and welcome them to this room and to the challenges that lie in front of you. Would also like to thank the current members that are somewhat holdovers from the last board for their continuation of their service. I rise tonight with a familiar refrain to many of you in this room, and that is my objection to the school renaming process. Again, as I have done in the past, actually going back nearly a year, I am objecting in strong terms to the disparaging documents that have been floated out there for over a year now that take down the good names of many of our namesakes. And when I say many of, they do not take down the namesakes of all of our school namesakes, and I'll get back to that in a minute. As you consider the flaws in the process going forward and determine to either move forward or halt any changes in the renaming process, I ask you seriously to take a look at those documents. Take a look at the documents that Phil Varner wrote and try to look at them objectively as educators and as community citizens. They are literally shot through with bias and opinion. They literally are opinion pieces, not historical scholarship. They fall short of meeting the standards for scholarship set out by the American Historical Society in many ways, Historical Association, correction. The writer relies on misuse of sources. He actually anonymously refers to his own writings in parts of what he presents on these web pages. He uses logical fallacies and confirmation bias throughout. These are things that a ninth grade English teacher would have failed him on. And I honestly ask you to take a look at these. I think many of you maybe for the first time. A linguistics expert has referred to them as Swiss cheese. And as I look back over them, I constantly learn new things. The writer Phil Varner literally uses exactly the same phrase when he takes down my great aunt, Sarepta Moran, and Miss Carrie Burnley, when he says that they held a uniquely effective role in the historic activism of being members of the United Daughters of the Confederacy and having something that he never really refers to properly as rewriting the textbooks. And in fact, when he was challenged by a local journalist who's often in this room, he was not able to substantiate any of his claims against my great aunt. Is this fair? I don't believe it is. So the documents are dishonest at their core. They denigrate formerly revered school namesakes, but not all of them. This is hard to say, but I would like to ask you all, do you know that these namesakes, the way he's referred to them, are he only takes down the Caucasian namesakes. The African-American namesakes are spared his vile and dishonest attributions. This is something that I think the board really needs to take a strong look at. Miss Nanny Cox Jackson is spared and is shown to be a woman above reproach. She probably was.
Mr. Moran, you're out of time.
I'm
sir.
out of time. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
We appreciate your comments. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. I just quickly close, ask you to please take down those documents or replace them with factual scholarship. Thank you.
Anybody else here in the media center? All right, Mr. Como, do we have anybody signed up who has an interest in making public comment now? And a reminder that we do have another opportunity towards the end of the meeting for public comment.
Yeah, I'll just ask anybody in the attendee gallery to raise their hand to indicate that they'd like to make public comment at this time.
All right, thank you. We'll close that and keep moving. We now again have a minor adjustment and to our agenda and just the process Now we'll open up an opportunity for our student representative on the board if they have anything that they would like to report. So Ms. Heapy, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just first want to start off by thanking everyone for having me here. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. As a senior at CHS and being in this building, it's undeniable that it's been a stressful time, but I'm just really thankful, along with a lot of my peers, for the school board, for administration, for just so many of you guys in this room and watching, for addressing the concerns and taking action. I guess the one thing that I will say really quickly is, as a student and surrounded by peers in this building, what is, I guess, the biggest concern is how long this hands-on action is going to last. I think that it's important that we continue this, whether that's people in the building, whether that's, these preventative measures that needs to persist throughout the year and beyond. This isn't, while yes, this was a hard time, a difficult time that was brought to the attention of larger audiences recently, the good and the bad is not new at CHS. And so, this isn't a quick fix. This is something that needs to continue to be addressed. I just am really, again, grateful for the support of all you guys. And I really appreciate you guys having me up here. So thank you.
Thank you. And please keep in mind, like I said before the meeting, I'll circle back and you're more than welcome to make comment on anything that we're talking about, or if you have any questions, but did want to designate that special time for you. So thank you. All right. Now I would like to entertain or ask for a motion for adoption of our consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
And if there are any questions or discussion, now would be the time to bring that forward. Okay. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you. All right, now we move on to our action items, and I will turn this over to Dr. Gurley. 10.0.
All right, first up, we will have Dr. Odie with our program of studies 24-25.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley, good evening and Happy New Year. Last month, staff presented the draft 24-25 program of studies. After our discussion, we have removed the grading scale from the program of studies at the board's request. We'll present that to you at a later time this year. The change is reflected in the updated program of studies, and tonight the superintendent recommends that the board take action.
Thank you. And I did just want to reiterate the question that I had raised and sent to Dr. Gurley. And this was specific to the CTE sequencing course for the unmanned 1 and 2 courses. So I didn't know if we had any information back from Ms. Fitzgerald or anybody regarding the number of students who might be interested in that, and then if that will affect staffing or who would be teaching that, if we know.
I do have some and I believe Ms. Fitzgerald is here, but I did reach out to Mr. Bennett, who is not able to be here since he works really hard on the scheduling. Ms. Fitzgerald, if you want to come on up in case. He did share some information with me. Basically, this year, it was easier to add the unmanned drones courses. There were 2 sections that were added this year because 2 added courses that were taught by engineering teachers were removed. That was changed. So this year, there was minimal impact. Because of those 2 removals of the added from the engineering teachers course or course loads. Next year, as you know, in the program of studies, Unmanned Drones 2 has been added so that there is a sequential opportunity for students so that they can become CTE completers. So if we, what he shared, that is, if every student that was in Unmanned Drones 1 wants to be a completer and takes Unmanned Drones 2, there could be some impact because we would need to have those two courses added in to accommodate the students who took Unmanned Drones 1. And then if there are students who also want to take Unmanned Drones 1, new students, then we have that as well. So there would have to be some decisions that are made. It would impact engineering because these are engineering teachers that also teach unmanned drones. So there would be some decisions that need to be made on whether courses are offered based on, as this program of studies is approved, then we move into the next phase of getting students course requests and all of that. So we would be looking at those course requests to see who's interested in the engineering, who's interested in the unmanned drones, and then those decisions would have to be made.
And when Dr. Odie is saying, excuse me, when she's saying the completers, when I mentioned to you sequential elective, that's the same thing, same terminology. So if you're going to be a completer, then you must take a sequential elective.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else to add, Megan?
And as far as the data for engineering enrollment and just that pathway, we are seeing a slight decline. And in this year, we do have lower numbers in our engineering 1 courses that could put that impact, that could allow room for an unmanned aircraft systems 2 course for next year if we are following the trends from the enrollment data. So I don't think this is going to impact, it's going to do a major hit on the engineering program. It's adding an additional pathway and it's adding additional work-based learning opportunities in the engineering program. And I also think that when I look at the enrollment for unmanned aircraft 1, half of those students are current seniors right now. So the unmanned aircraft systems 2 will only need 1 section for next year.
So I definitely don't want to give the impression that I'm not supportive of the sequencing. So this is not what this is about. But I guess a few years ago, we had made an effort as a board to, I believe, offer an introduction to engineering. And I don't remember if that was at Walker or Buford. And I'm looking at both, and I know Ms. Thompson, does that happen at Walker? In an attempt to increase exposure, to some of these kids, and then hopefully increase numbers and the diversity of students. And I just don't want to see that impacted, so that if we add this, which I understand why we need to do, to add the sequential, I don't want it to impact, say, a big number of kids who might be interested, and just looking at that as an equitable decision. And I feel like it's hard because we don't have a magic ball and we don't know what the numbers might be. But I also don't want to hear next year, during enrollment, that we don't have a teacher to teach engineering 1 if we have increased numbers. So maybe I'm off a little bit, but I just wanted to at least bring it.
Right.
No, that's right.
And we did discuss if there was an issue with the master scheduling, if there's a conflict where we do see an actual rise in enrollment numbers for engineering, that the priority would be that Mr. Miller would teach engineering sections and we will not offer the second course. While it is a sequential course and we want our CTE completers for our CCCRI numbers, we know that it's only going to give us just a handful of extra completers versus if we didn't offer engineering 1 and 2. So we do know that, and we are going to prioritize engineering for Mr. Miller if we run into that situation.
What's the cap for the unmanned drones class?
Right now, the suggestion is 12 due to equipment and safety. They are, I just talked to Kelly Davis with VDOE CTE. They are reviewing the curriculum right now. So if you go onto the CTE Verso website, you do see that the curriculum page is down for both Unmanned 1 and 2 because they are making changes to it. And so we She said that it'll come out any day. And so the enrollment cap may change. It may increase. The framework may be a little bit different. But they are right now working that it's under review and it's going to be approved soon.
So minus the seniors, what do you anticipate? Like if everybody enrolled, how many students are left that might be interested in taking that second course?
I would say safely 10 to 12 kids would go up to unmanned 2 for the next school year.
So we couldn't do it concurrently, I guess was where I was heading next. Thank you.
One way to look at it, these are some tough decisions that we will have to make, but we are on the cutting edge and offering some great courses and opportunities for our students.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to turn to board members here for questions. I don't know. Ms. Heafy, do you have any questions? Mr. Meyer? Ms. Burns? Mr. Morse? Ms. Cooper? Okay. You're good. Any questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we are back to the recommendation.
Yes.
So I will move that we approve the 24-25 program of studies as presented.
In second.
And any further discussion or questions? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you.
Thank you so
And-
much.
And thank you, principals, for being here. Appreciate you.
All right, next we have 10.2. As you know, we have been working collaboratively with Albemarle County Public Schools with regards to K-Tech. And so we do have an MOU that we have developed jointly with them. Thank you to Ms. Powell and to both legal teams from both sides. We do have a document that I think definitely supports both organizations and continues to help career and technical education thrive here in the Charlottesville area. What I am asking this evening is if you will authorize me to sign on behalf of Charlottesville City Schools to sign that document. The superintendent from Albemarle will sign it and I will sign the document.
So I move that we give permission to Dr. Gurley to sign on behalf of the city schools.
Second.
Any questions or discussion from anybody? All right. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? All right, there you go, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your work on that.
Thank you all. Now we have 11.0 items for discussion. We will start with 11.1 and we will give a CHS safety update. We will do this in two parts. We will start with Mr. Leatherwood and Dr. Johnson, who will give us an update. And then after their presentation, we will have Mr. Kugler, our safety coordinator, give an update. And as always, as they go through the presentation, if you have some questions, feel free to ask while they're going through. All right. Dr. Johnson, Mr. Leatherwood, you're up first.
Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, and Dr. Gurley. It's been my pleasure to be with you with you this evening to give you all updates on how we're moving forward as the Black Knight Nation. As you know, I returned to the building on November 27th. Before that, on November 20th and 21st, our school underwent a reset. During this time, our staff participated in restorative conversations on how to improve our school community and brainstormed solutions to issues that impacted student learning and school culture. Those days provided the foundation of how we move forward. On the 27th, we reopened with support from the community who cheered on students and staff as they entered the building. That morning, we held a school-wide statewide morning meeting where, as a school community, we were able to reaffirm our commitment and expectations of being present, being respectful, being responsible, being safe, and being a learner. One of my takeaways from that moment is that our students wanted the same things we found that our staff wanted. They wanted the structures, systems, and support that would build a community that we're all proud of. So immediately following that meeting, we began to work toward an environment that reinforced safety, routines, and community. With the help of volunteers and division level staff, students were encouraged to make positive choices, and staff were empowered to uphold expectations. This has been our ongoing effort. After the reset meeting, one student shared with us that based on the reflection she had about her own choices up through that point, she wanted to do better and be better. She said that she decided that she no longer wanted to skip classes and wanted more for herself moving forward. She would make the necessary changes. She and so many others have been doing just that. One of our goals is to be transparent and forthcoming, which is why I wanted to take a moment to discuss the discipline issues that have occurred during school hours since the reset. This slide shows high-level infractions that resulted in serious administrative responses from November 27th through December 16th, shown using the state's reporting codes. In the top section, you will see that we have had 5 incidents that fall in the behaviors that endanger self, others category. 1 incident that falls in the behaviors related to school operations category, and 3 incidents that fall in the behaviors of a safety concern category. Again, these categories reflect the Virginia Department of Education system for collecting data about student behaviors in schools' administrative responses. The notes on the bottom half of the slide explain the exact 9 incidents that are captured within those categories. There were 2 verbal altercations, 3 physical altercations, 3 incidents involving marijuana, tobacco, or vapes, and one incident where a student refused to comply with staff. Of course, there were many more than these behavior incidents. Disciplinary consequences were serious enough need to be reported by the state. There are other situations where the student behavior was not as serious, or where staff were able to address the matter with restorative practices. Threat assessments, of which there were 2 during this time, are not included in these state codes. Since fighting has been a topic of focus at CHS, I'd like to give further information about the 3 physical altercations. One of these fights was between friends, where horseplay became serious and one of the friends was slapped. The second was between 2 individuals who were in a relationship. And the third was between 2 siblings. We will continue to address discipline through a restorative and equity-centered lens where we firmly establish boundaries and expectations, while remembering that these are young people who are constantly growing, learning, and developing. As administrative leaders, we are focused on working toward appropriate and consistent processes for responding to student behaviors. And what I can report is that the school's culture is improving. One way we are working to improve the school culture is by creating a space that can serve as an office space for community partners and restorative circles. Partners who work with our students can now be present in our building regularly, mentor, and build new proximity. An example of one of these partners is Daniel Fairley, who is the Youth Opportunity Coordinator for Black Male Achievement. We're also implementing a new set of safety practices that include a new student sign-in, sign-out process starting on January 16th. Students will be asked to sign in if they arrive at school after it starts at 9:05. They will also be asked to sign out every time they leave the building. Our attendance secretary and Amber Jackson, along with our interway attendant, ISB staff, and our student support specialist will be supporting this transition. Over the next few weeks, we will be transforming to a main office entry only. Right now, students and staff members can enter when school starts from the Performing Arts Center. Moving forward, beginning at the start of the second semester, we will only have one point of entry for our staff and students entering the building at the start of the school day. Excuse me. I used to talking a lot. So. Additionally, at the start of the semester, we are requiring all staff members and students who drive to school to have a parking pass. Parking passes for students is a practice that has historically been done here at CHS, where we are reestablishing that expectation. We have filled our in-school detention position and have repurposed and clarified current support positions, including the roles of our graduation coach and our student support specialist. We have given them both focused caseloads, formal systems that provide better supports to those who they work with. Just yesterday, we met with our graduation coach to discuss organizing the college visits for students who expressed interest in going to college but didn't know what was available for them. Daring our kids to dream, then supporting them through the steps it takes to reach them is what we are charged to do. High expectations, daily affirmations, and positive experiences will be an essential part of doing this. We are improving and streamlining systems to ensure every area of the school has supervision. We have created a plan that maps out the identified coverage areas for specified staff members during arrival time, lunch, dismissal, and class transitions. We've also completed the facilities walkthrough with Dr. Gurley, Dr. Johnson, Kim Powell, Julia Green, Mr. Kugler, and Mr. Katina. During the walk, we identified areas that needed improvement and placed work orders or created a plan to address the need. For example, during the walkthrough, we noticed we had a significant peeling of paint on several points of our hallway corridor. To address this, we will be hosting a beautification day on January 13th, starting at 8:30, where we will repaint these spaces. Thank you to the city for providing the supplies we need in order to make this day of service happen. Moving forward, our goal is to tell the true story of what it really means to be a Black Knight. I spent many years as an educator within these walls. What was true in those early days still remains true today. These students excel in many ways. Our award-winning marching band is just returning from a stint on the world stage at the Rome New Year's Eve Day Parade. Our undefeated girls and boys basketball teams won the scrimmage play Winter Classic. 2 alumni created an inspiring new mural in our gym lobby. The CHS Quiz Bowl team recently won its match on Central Virginia's Battle of the Brains TV show. And one of our Bacon robotics team has already secured its spot for the state tournament. On top of all these discrete accomplishments, day to day, when I walk these halls, I meet students who are working hard, supporting their friends and family, and building pride by being themselves. Thanks to everyone, students, staff, alumni, community, who make up our Black Knight Nation. Who make our Black Knight Nation great, I should say. And thank you for allowing me to share this evening, all this information with you this evening. Again, thank you.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Leatherwood and Dr. Johnson?
Go ahead, that's fine. Mr. Meyer, go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Lever, Principal Lever, thank you very much for that presentation. On slide 3, going back a couple of slides, you listed some of the behavior issues that have happened. How does these 2 weeks that you have there relate to the previous couple months before?
This point,
We don't have the exact numbers, but we can prepare a board follow-up for you to have those exact numbers so you can compare those.
Thank you.
Ms. Burns, do you have any questions? Mr. Morse? Maggie, I don't want to forget you. No? Okay. Ms. Cooper? Mr. Lilly? No? Ms. Richardson? My quick question was when you mentioned coverage areas and that you've assigned staff for those areas, is that admin or teachers participating in that? What does that look like, please?
well, actually, a combination of admin, our CSAs, those groups, and support staff, where this is a big building and we want to have people in different areas of the building to make sure everything's covered. And it's bigger now than it was back when I was started many years ago. It's a lot of nooks and crannies in this building. So we're going to try to do the best we can to make sure everything's covered.
And one thing that we did not mention in terms of adding additional staff, we've worked with Ms. Powell. And so we will now take two current crossing guards, and they will be serving as they will be serving as hall monitors / cafeteria monitors to give us extra hands. Because what we know is that the building, we've said over and over, 76 doors in the building, and the building was constructed during a time that really wasn't trying to keep students contained to a space. It was kind of a more an open flow. So having those additional bodies during the lunchtime will help to keep students centered into a space. And so we will be bringing them on shortly. Thursday, I see Ms. Powell saying Thursday. So that's next Thursday, they will begin. So that's 2 more people that will, there'll be 2 additional bodies. So that's the kind of coverage, a lot of bodies are needed. I think we said that last month, but a lot of bodies are needed in order to effectively keep students centered and into specific areas.
Dr. Really quick
Ms.
question.
Heaphy? Yeah.
Are those 2, you said there are 2 new bodies coming in, are they going to take the role of CSAs or will they just be lunchtime monitors?
No, they will be noticeably different
Okay.
from CSAs, and we've talked about that. They will come in and they will be stationed like when I'm here,
Okay.
as a barrier.
Gotcha.
That no, if you don't have a pass, I want you to go back and get a pass, and then you can come through. So they will be there in those spots where you saw the adults. They will be there. CSAs will continue to work their
Okay.
specified areas.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Any other questions, board? All right. Thank you, Mr. Leatherwood. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
We'll now have
Dr. Johnson, appreciate you too.
We'll now have Mr. Kugler.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Gurley. Thank you for allowing me to bring you up to date on some of the initiatives that we're working on.
You're going to have to.
Okay. So we have two general topics that we've been working on as far as general initiatives to update the school division. Communications is one, physical security measures being the second. Currently within the different schools, based upon when they were built and what resources have been allocated, there's varying levels of communication capability within each property. We have the traditional intercom systems that are hardwired into the buildings. Some of the schools utilize two-way radios at various levels. And you have phones, but not every classroom has phones depending on which building you're in. The two-way radios we use are very simple, much like the family service radios that you can buy when you go camping. If one person's talking, nobody else can, and if two people try to talk at the same time, then nobody's talking. So they're very simple. We have some schools have actually invested in some of the family radio systems so that every teacher can have a radio to communicate. Some of the other schools have a higher dollar version, which has a specified frequency like we have at the high school and the middle schools. But they are limited in range, usually to about maybe 1/8 of a mile, depending on terrain. It doesn't afford us any ability to communicate with first responders if they're responding to the building, which that was one of the things that we lost when the SROs left the campuses. They had the ability to talk directly because they're using that radio system. We don't have that capability currently. So what options we have moving forward? We're looking at upgrading radios. The regional radio system was updated this past year. So Charlottesville, UVA, and Albemarle County all got new radios and a new radio antenna array. There is space and allocated for the school system to have its own talk group on that radio network. We have not invested in the actual radios to use it. The only current subset of the school's administration that uses the radio system is transportation on the school buses. Where this becomes important to us is often in places where the radio traffic is busy, such as the high school campus. If we have two people trying to talk at the same time, they cancel each other out. The more robust radio system doesn't allow you to have two people talk at the same time. It also provides a greater range. So for our elementary school campuses that have walking buses, the current radios we have are very limited when they get to the end of their walking bus, and it's not giving them a good measure of safety without using cell phones. Transitioning over to the regional radio network eliminates that problem so that they'll have direct communication not only back to the school, but potentially direct to emergency communications if necessary.
Mr. Kugler, do we have a cost estimate for what it would take to upgrade to that system?
We've got a slight cost estimate depending on how many we invest in. An initial investment to see how much it would benefit us would probably take about 30 radios, and that's about $100,000 investment. They work out, do the math, they're almost $4,000 a piece. So they are more expensive than what we're currently utilizing, but they're more robust, and it gives us a little more discrete communication and the ability that we can communicate from school to school during a crisis. There are also some opportunities available with some of our existing software suites, as well as some others that we've investigated to allow communication from the classroom to administration, and throughout the buildings directly. So in the event of a crisis or in the event of a student problem, teachers and administrators could potentially use a tablet or computer-based software package to make that communication just as a backup to the intercom system, to the telephones in classrooms and or radios.
I have another question. Would the upgraded radios, because it's on the same antenna as CPS and the city and the county and UVA, would that solve any of our communication problems with first responders?
It does give us the capability. They can switch to our channels and talk to us directly. We won't have access to their channels. So about the best way to describe it is each organization has a page of channels or 2 pages, and they have the ability, because of their authority, they can switch down to our page, but we can't switch over to theirs. So it's all talking in the same radio frequencies, but they are locked out depending on what your access.
So for Charlottesville High School here, what system is being, or systems are being used? You talked about radios, but they're not functional necessarily?
That they're limited in their capability. They're functional as far as range and coverage in the building.
Okay.
However, if I'm trying to talk to you and Dr. Gurley's trying to talk to you at the same time, we both press the talk button at the same time, you won't hear either one of us.
So does it functionally work?
I would say we have issues with it probably about 1 out of 4 times.
Okay, so that has been a problem in the past and it currently is a problem.
Yes, we adapt by how we manage our radio discipline, but there are communication problems with it.
Okay.
There's also some etiquette. I think also what we've talked about, there's some etiquette issues there as well, in some situations where people are just getting on the walkie-talkie. And I think there's some opportunities for us to work with people that, what needs to be communicated and when, because I think to Mr. Kugler's point in the past, when we've had situations, everyone's hopping on the radio and everyone's canceling everyone out. And we've not really been able to communicate effectively. And so that's when we run into the bulk of those issues, when we're having those high tense situations and everyone's trying to get on. But on that day to day, we can communicate, but I think what we've also seen is that there's just some etiquette things when people get on, like who should be who should be on, who should be off. And that's been some of the challenges with the current system.
Okay, but so, sorry, I'm not understanding this, but
That's okay.
the current system does function if, let's say, there's a fight and we need to bring everybody attention and they can communicate and get a hold of things, or is it that not actually being facilitated by the current system we have?
The current system works well when something happens in isolation. If we have multiple events at the same time, it falls down simply because you have multiple people trying to report something at the same time.
Question, do we have any sense of if these radios are available? Are they ready to be shipped if we say, let's do that? Or is there any supply chain issue that we're aware of?
We purchased them in a state contract and they should be available. Usually standard outfitting for the actual radios themselves is about 4 to 6 weeks. All the supporting equipment, radio, battery chargers and so forth, from the vendor that I spoke to just today, there are no back orders on anything. So.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, just go back a little bit. If a teacher has a problem with a student in the classroom, can they get a hold of the administration to get support and have someone come?
Yes.
That's not an issue?
That's not an issue because the teachers are not calling out on the radio. They're calling down to the front office, either using a phone or intercom, and then the front office is then broadcasting a call for help out over the radio.
Okay, and that system's working perfectly
That
fine?
system's working right now.
There's no, I get caught in a phone tree or anything like that. They get another person on the line right away.
Yes.
Great.
I think one thing I do want to clarify, because we heard that during the reset. I think part of that issue, I see Mr. Davis going like this. Part of the issue is teachers were calling down to a number that was sometimes ringing busy or not having an answer. And I think that's the part that Dr. Johnson and team are working through and that was that's what came out of the reset, to move the number that's being called from the front desk to a number that doesn't get a lot of traffic, that's always managed by someone that when that phone rings, they know that it's emergency, someone has a need, and we're still on track with that, correct, Dr. Johnson? I'm looking to her. Oh.
Yes, has been put into place. So we have 3 phones that ring to specific areas if there's an emergency. And then we have a non-emergency number that is internal that they can call directly as well.
Thank you. So it wasn't functional, but now we have a different process in place.
Any other questions? How many walking buses do we have currently?
Yeah, Clark and Venable are 2 walking buses currently.
So it would be important to me to know that they have a reliable means to communicate and they're not hitting a barrier where they run out of.
And that's two schools, because for clarification, the Clark, there's more than one, but there's more than one walking train, more than one walking bus. Ms. Powell can clarify.
Yes, there are, on a low day, 40+ kids walking. Some days there's upwards of close to 60 or so. So there are more than what a yellow school bus would hold participating in the walking buses for Venable and Clark that we sponsor with school staff supervising that. Part of the protocol, there are really clear protocols with the cell phones, and the school office, is on call until until we're all clear. So there's definitely ways to communicate, but one of the requests that the walking bus brought forward to Todd is that it would be nice to have a radio that would make the whole walk with them. But so they're not trying to rely on the school radios now for that coverage. Part of the protocol is they are walking with their phones, but some of them may also use their school radios because that does provide coverage for some fair portion of the walk. But that's the situation right now.
We're prior to the pandemic, we were transitioning over from the Ocularis security camera system to the Genetec system, primarily because Genetec would allow to integrate access control with our security cameras into one software suite. So currently we have the Genetec system here at the high school, and it monitors both our cameras as well as our access points. All the doors on the building to the exterior are already monitored to know when they're propped open beyond a certain essentially distance, or when they're open and closed. What we're doing in our next phase is we're upgrading our access control to where we're going to have our electronic fob access to both enter and exit at many of the exterior doors. All the exterior doors that are remote from the front door where someone's sitting throughout the day will have an electronic card reader that you'll swipe in. That's going to disable a local alarm on that door and allow teachers to escort students out for outside education. There'll be a fob access on the outside to allow them to come back in. This serves 2 functions. It allows us to maintain that ability for outside education, plus it also allows us to directly monitor when those doors have been accessed without permission. The alarm will sound until someone resets it with a fob. And in the remote areas of the building where we've had a lot of illicit behavior, that's been a problem because they're out of sight from where staff typically is. They're low traffic areas. This will directly address those issues. The Genetec system has a mobile app, which we are investigating to see if it's going to serve our purposes. There are also other alerts that can be directly tied into it to send out text message or emails to let us know that an alert has occurred that meets certain priorities. This expansion is already in the works. We haven't gotten a work order set up with our vendor as far as when they're going to start work. It's about a $90,000 investment.
Are we worried about budget allocation for this year, or we have the money and it's just a function of, again?
We have the money already allocated through security assets, so this isn't a budget request at this time.
Any other questions?
sorry, this is just for Charlottesville High School?
This is, right now, it's just for Charlottesville High School. When we get into expanding the Genetech systems through the other schools, converting them from Ocularis to Genetech, similar programs will be set up at those facilities as well.
And I guess, sorry, when do you expect that to happen?
It's going to be as we transition. We're currently working on Greenbrier, as well as the new construction at Buford will also be built out with Genetech. There are going to be upgrades to our camera system to cover some blind spots that we currently have. We only have cameras in our public areas. We don't include them in the classrooms. Most of the camera points are covering our exits and entrances, as well as our large gathering areas. The only three large gathering areas that are not covered is the Performing Arts Center, the gymnasiums, and the library.
Are there plans to cover those then?
As we get into expanding the system, the library will be first because it's the most highly trafficked. It's going to incorporate both the walkway above it as well as this area, but we're not focusing actually on the engineering classrooms down at the end. The gymnasium and the auditorium haven't been investigated as what it's going to take to look at those spaces, primarily because the construction of them makes it a little prohibitive to get in there.
But eventually you'll have cameras in all of those areas.
Eventually, we plan to have cameras in all those areas, yes.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry, back
Sure.
to the doors, the alarms. Are those silent alarms that will go to specific staff members to
No,
respond to?
they're going to be audible alarms.
They will be.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're moving forward with the CHEA open gate. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just a quick question about the cameras. Do those pick up sound as well?
I don't know if they are built to pick up sound. We currently do not have,
Will that be an update that you guys are looking into?
I don't anticipate it because it would require replacing each device.
The current law per the state is that any public camera that is in a school system can only capture
Okay.
video. Audio is against the law at this time.
Okay. What about like exterior areas as well? Same thing. Okay, that's a figure. Okay.
We're moving forward with CHEA open gate. It's a lightweight portable weapons detection system. We can utilize it both inside the building as well as at special events outside the building, such as football games, soccer games. It's very similar to what you see at UVA and any of the large special events run by RMC events. It's not designed specifically for a particular type or type of threat. It can be scaled depending on what you're trying, how specific and how fine you want to screen. That your sensitivity there is based upon how fast you need to process your population. It's currently being utilized by Louisa County as well as Monticello. And you can see it, similar system set up in Henrico County already this year. It's got reporting software built into the system, which will allow us to track not only how fast we process the students through the screening process, how many students we process, the number of alarms, and we can then verify how many of those alarms were false alarms. For our initial rollout for the high school and special events, it's going to involve six gates.
To be clear, these systems can't stop anybody from coming and shooting their way into the school if they're coming.
Correct. I mean, the only thing that, there's no way to physically stop somebody. We have other physical measures built in place. Our entry vestibule is built with that intention. The But this will act not only as a confirmation that it will find something if somebody tries to bring it in the building, but it also acts as a deterrent because once they're in place, you find that, most people are not going to try to bring things into the building.
My question is there a protocol if something is found on a student? Have we fleshed out what that would look like?
Yes, I've explored both not only how Louisa County implemented their system, but also how it's been utilized at a couple other campuses. And typically the way it's done is the education process goes out first. You explain this is how the system will work and what the expectation is of the students. As the school buses and students arrive, certain items like tablets, laptops, aluminum water bottles, the students will have those out. As they approach the gate, they will hand those items off to a teacher who's going to be standing adjacent to it, and that gets passed around. The student then walks through the gate with their backpack. If nothing alerts, they gather their items and go on to class. If something does alert when they walk through with their backpack, they hand their backpack to an administrator, they walk back through the gate. If they don't alert on their person themselves, then the administrator goes through their bag to determine what set it off. Some really large 3-ring binders and other things that have a combination of density and shape will trigger it as a false alarm. But Louisa County's had a lot of success, and they process approximately the same number of students for Charlottesville High School in about 15 minutes a day.
So if it's the will of the board, I would like to request a follow-up just on what the protocol is going to be specifically for the high school. So the staff allocation, I'm hearing teachers involved, admin needing to be there. It'd be helpful just to know, like, what is the timeline for implementation? What is the communication plan to families and students? And then what are the responsibilities of our staff members in the building? And then, as Ms. Cooper mentioned, should something be found, what are the next steps? Is this search happening, in front of all of their peers? Is there a separate space? I would like to see those details if it's the will of the board.
I would agree.
I think everybody's in agreement with that, so thank you. I guess that would be on a follow-up. So thank you.
I just wanted to know the expected date of placement.
I'm sorry.
The expected date of placement.
From the date of order, it's 4 to 6 weeks to receive the equipment.
And do we have a cost for that, please?
Approximately $120,000.
Thank you.
So to be clear, that we have not ordered these yet.
We have not ordered these yet, no.
So there's a lot of things that you're presenting with some price tags. I mean, are we going to anticipate that this will come to us in your budget, your proposed budget, or how's this going to happen?
Once a list is compiled of all the costs that they're anticipating to implement this, we'll examine it against our current budget and to see if we have any vacancy savings that we can use to apply for it. And then we also have the security, safety money that we have been putting aside in the Fund 25 for local expenditures. So we have some money set aside for these, and we can examine that once we have the list. And
thank you, Ms. Hoover. Any other questions from anybody?
I mean, you might know this off the top of your head, but potentially it's for the next presentation, but does this actually deter weapons or events from actually happening and versus other alternatives, and what are those other alternatives?
As far as deterring illicit items being brought into campus, if you talk to school systems that have put it in place, they find that typically within the first week or so of them going in board, the bushes outside the school get filled with those contraband items because the students don't want to get caught bringing them in. As far as a determined aggressor, is this going to stop someone that's determined? I would like to say it would, but it won't. And you know, the presence of the presence of law enforcement has shown to be a measure of deterrent, but not uniformly, because you know there have been incidents at schools with SROs. There have been incidents at schools without them. Sadly, that's just the reality of the world we live in.
And would these be just at Charlottesville High School or was Charlottesville High School and Beaufort?
I'm sorry.
I said, would these just be at Charlottesville High School or would they be at Charlottesville High School and Beaufort?
Currently, we would test them here before expanding them out to other campuses. There are some limitations depending on physical space as far as where and how they can be utilized. As an example, Louisa County's run into a couple issues where the building itself has some high power lines running in the building that have caused some interference, plus their lack of connectivity to cell phone towers has caused some problems. So they're working with the vendor directly to try to get around some of those. As an example, Lugo McGinnis might be a good opportunity for another test place, but because of the physical dimensions of the space, it may not really be feasible to set one inside the building. So most of the buildings are getting the entry vestibules like we have here and at some of the other elementary schools. And I anticipate that, you know, as we continue through that project, we can incorporate making sure we have the space to set one of these gates for there.
Curious if anybody's speaking with Nielsen or Mr. Goddard, who happens to be in the room. You know, as far as what the middle school will be capable of, if they will house them, or if there's already I'm sure there are other safety mechanisms being put in place through the construction, but. Sorry, didn't mean to catch you off guard, Mike.
No.
As far as I'm aware, Nielsen's planning on integrating with whatever general security systems we have, but as far as firearm detection or anything like that, we have no plans for that as yet.
Thank you. My only other question was, so I guess I wasn't real clear on whether, as far as radio and communications, that you're bringing the best and recommending the best for us, or if there's going to be further discussion, or if there needs to be further discussion about that. And I don't know that it needs to happen now, but you know what the time frame is. I mean, I don't want to delay it if there are needs, but I mean.
Well, specific to the radios, and we're early in the investigating exactly how we can implement this, and it will be something to be added into a budget request going forward, not for this current year, is that the radios are professional grade. They're designed to be both intrinsically safe, which means they can be used in hazardous environments, as well as they are, for lack of a better term, public safety grade radios. They're designed to be dropped. They're designed to go into hazardous environments. They're professional grade radios. Currently they operate off of a digital 800 megahertz frequency that is restricted to public safety and government access. So that eliminates a lot of the issues we have with interference from other devices. It also brings in the capability going forward that the radios themselves can have a Wi-Fi connectivity built into them, that when that system is turned on, if they're inside a building that has a Wi-Fi network, then they can use that for radio communications if for some reason the radio itself cannot reach the radio tower. So that redundancy is not live in the radios at this point, but it's something that the vendor said will be available within the next 12 months.
So if we're purchasing before the next 12 months, I mean, is that an upgrade or are we going to have to,
It's already,
it's
they're
within it,
physically
it's
built in.
inherent.
It's just a
It's
matter
just a
of
turn
having
on.
the, yes.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions? Mr.
So,
Meyer?
sorry, just to be clear and going back to the communication, there's the much better solution out in the future, but we've definitely improved upon the systems we have in place at CHS now, not only through, I guess, protocol, but the necessary systems, or do we
Yes.
need it? Okay.
Well, what we are maximizing the capabilities we have with our existing radios through a better discipline in radio use, where I'm writing the protocols on how to communicate and what to communicate and what needs to be moved to some other means of communication. And so the staff will get that training.
And we
Event-
don't need any new equipment in the near term, or anything like
In
that to make
the,
sure
in the
that it
near term,
functions.
I don't anticipate any new equipment coming into the high school. It's not until we upgrade the radios that we'll actually get into new equipment for the high school.
I think we're good. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kugler. Up next, we have Ms. Raznick. She will give us our mental wellness support presentation.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Gurley. This will just be a brief presentation, but due to kind of the variety of my roles, you'll be seeing me again a lot over the next few months. And we wanted to do this because many of us take the opportunity of the new year to think about our physical and mental health, make some improvements on our behaviors. And so we wanted to remind you, our teachers, our families, and our students how to access the student mental health supports that we have at school year round. So this is tied into how we provide a culture of safety, wellness, and belonging in Charlottesville City Public Schools, specifically how we're supporting our social, emotional, and physical wellness. And I included 2 targets, but I'm constantly reminded about how our mental wellness impacts us across all aspects of our life. And we have many strategies and initiatives in place that align with our strategic plan. So if you remember one thing from today, it's this. Our school counselors at each of our schools are the initial point of contact for anybody who is concerned about student well-being. Students, staff, caregivers, about oneself or about each other, your school counselor is your point of contact. So I've included their faces because it's always nice to put a name with a face. So these are our wonderful elementary school counselors. You can reach them by calling the school, calling your teacher. And then we have our Walker and our Buford school counselors. And so they're by grade. And so you can, again, reach them by calling the school, their teacher, reach out to them directly. And then our CHS school counselors are broken up a little bit differently. They're by letter of the alphabet. And so if you need help finding that, they're on the Charlottesville City Schools website. Those are all listed, and the counseling department has their own website as well with lots of valuable information. So we also have our school counselors at Lugo McGinnis and a friendly face, Ms. Butler at K-Tech. So briefly, if you have a concern about your child, about a friend, about yourself, when you reach out to a school counselor, they're going to do an initial assessment of what that need is. So that assessment might include talking with you or the student, consulting with teachers, looking at grades, things like that. And then from there, they're gonna respond. So sometimes our students reach out to school counselors because they've had a disagreement with a friend. And so they meet with the school counselor at lunch with their friend and it's resolved. Other things are not necessarily resolved in one. session. It might be that you have a concern about a friend who's experienced loss. And so the school counselor really does that initial 1 to 6 sessions with a student to hopefully get them back into a good frame of mind and learning and being successful. If concerns continue after that, either students continue to have concerns about themselves or the people who love them do, that's when we're pulling in a multidisciplinary team to look at our more intensive level of support for student mental health needs. And so from that point, that team not only considers what the need is, but what interventionists in the building are a good match to support that student's need. We know that our school counselors are there for academic advising, social emotional wellness, and career exploration for all of our students. And so this is when we're tapping into our bigger school mental health professional team that provide that individualized, solution-focused, more long-term or extended duration support. This is also where we may be referring to community-based mental health providers. It's where we've invested in like Care Solace, which helps families connect with local community providers who take their insurance, which is always a challenge. Where we have programs like the Student Assistance Program, TDT, which is a Medicaid-funded program for individual students, as well as grant-funded programs like Evergreen at Beaufort. And so, again, this was just a way to remind everybody, if you're worried, talk to your school counselor. The school counselor will be able to direct a family or a student to any services or supports that are needed. And as well as an opportunity to thank the board and Dr. Gurley for your commitment to a robust student mental health support team. We have a large team with a tremendous amount of expertise who are active in both the community and in our schools to improve student mental health. So that was it. Any questions?
Start with Ms. Richardson. Do you have any questions? Ms. Dooley?
Can you or Dr. Gurley speak to how our staffing levels compare to the standards of quality set by the state? Essentially, how far in excess are we?
In terms of school counselors or all the others?
All of the above. So the state sets their standard. I'm interested in knowing how much more we are providing to our students.
Well, I think the first part is that all the other things that we do aren't even in the SOQs, aren't required. So I think when you look around the region, we are at the top in terms of the amount of SEL support in some form or fashion that we're providing. So, I mean, the only thing in the SOQs are school counselors and social workers, I'm sorry, social workers, psychologists. Those are definitely in the SOQs, but then I think you will see that we are exceeding in the other areas. Anything you wanted to add?
I know that we are above the SOQs, but I can look and see exactly how much, kind of as a proportion.
Don't go to any additional work. Okay. I'm just trying to highlight the point of this level of services that your team is provided and that we have committed to our students' mental well-being.
Ms. Cooper, any questions?
No questions at the moment.
Mr. Morse? No. Mr. Meyer?
Yeah, I think I remember back there in 2019, 2020, there was a Medicare program that I think was paying for a lot of deep services that got canceled. Have we been able to replace that in some way?
So you're probably thinking about our TDT, our therapeutic day treatment program. The rules through Medicaid changed in the past few years, and it became more stringent for families to access those services. So we enter into contracts with organizations that provide the services in our schools, but the services themselves are between the family and the provider. And so we have TDT in almost all of our schools. We just heard today at Walker, they're getting another TDT staff member. So that program is kind of growing again after the changes in those regulations, but it is a Medicaid, you have to be Medicaid eligible to access those services.
And they are not included in the 41.
They are not included in the 41, nor are our partnerships with Region 10 or Evergreen. These are people that we hire and pay.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Aside from like, well, first of all, thank you for everything you do. Like as a student, it really means a lot. And I really hope you guys recognize that we appreciate, all you do for our mental health, especially in a time like this. I guess my question is like the school counselors, especially at CHS, they have so much going on, and I mean they have a ton of kids and a ton of jobs. Aside from the counseling team, I know that there are spaces like the comm space that is at CHS. Are you like I just don't think a lot of people necessarily understand what those spaces do. Like are you guys working of, again, aside from like these people who are amazing, implementing spaces or policies or anything just for students if they just need a second just to go to somewhere?
So a lot of those spaces are pretty school dependent. All of our schools have comm spaces, reset zones, focus areas, things like that. And so each school really develops their system for how they support students in accessing them. But in speaking with Dr. Johnson and CHS admin, that has come up of how do we make what we have more known to students. And so that's a commitment for CHS.
So just keep on. So would you say that if the counselors at schools, there's enough supply of them, you might say, to meet the demand, or is there more demand than we have supply for all the different types of services that the students need, mental health wise?
We can always use more.
I was gonna say, it's okay to say we can always use more.
We can always use more. What we always want to be focused on is quality over quantity. So we don't want a ton of people and then not having quality or equitable services across schools. And so we're focused on highly qualified, well-trained experts.
So what would be the 5 positions that you think we need most to meet the demands that are most apparent or that you're hearing from?
Wow. Can I follow up in a written report? I think what's less important is the position and what's more important is what they do. So making sure that all of our students have access to professionals who can provide individualized, targeted counseling supports, as well as professionals who have a breadth of knowledge to provide the academic advising, career exploration, social emotional learning at all the schools. And so not to like beat around the bush, but I think if there were 5 more people, they would do a mix of those things, depending on the school and the age of the students.
So, sorry, I guess what I'm looking for is if you had another $500,000 or $1 million to spend on this, how would you allocate it? If it's not FTEs, fine, but again, and we don't have to get into it now, but I guess that's what I'd like to see in the budget is, okay, we're doing great, I think, right now, and I want to thank you, and don't want to see this as I'm criticizing in any way, but how do we take it to the next level? Because my assumption and what I've seen with my children and my understanding from the elementary schools where my children go is there's a lot more need now, post-COVID and everything else that's going on in the world than we were at 4 or 5 years ago. And so if we're just meeting that 4 or 5 years ago need, we're not actually meeting the actual needs. And so I think we need to increase that. And I'd just like to make sure that, again, we understand that and can present that for the budget next year and be able to, again, see that in the schools next year.
And so there's, I think, $500 million. We need to focus on a large continuum that would include supports for students with emotional disabilities, identified disabilities that impact their mental health, increase the intensity and availability of support so students can remain in our public schools and not access private day as frequently. But then there are also many students who have acute or long-term crises that need support. And so where we can improve across the continuum.
And one thing that we've heard from our CHS students on yesterday. Dr. Johnson, Mr. Leatherwood, and I met with Sohi and Ella. Ella's a 23 graduate of CHS. She's at UVA now. And so they have challenged us to look at some alternatives along that continuum. And so one of their suggestions is how can we incorporate mindfulness? Like where's the space for that here? And so we are working with our students, amplifying them. You know, again, the answers are in the building. And so we're giving them the platform to say, like, what does it look like? How can we make this happen? And so hopefully that's something that we will be able to down the road, be able to bring forward and say, this is something that was birthed in our school from our students. And it's something that we're implementing and, you know, and helping students who may not ordinarily do something like this and have access to something like this and to place it right here and at CHS.
Good. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Resnick. We now have 11.3, and that's Kim Powell, Facility Improvement Projects Update, and she's bringing along our very special friend, Mike Goddard.
Good evening, Dr. Gurley, members of the board and Madam Chair. Always excited to talk with you about our facility improvement projects and what we have going on with the capital improvements plan. That's the rolling 5-year plan that drives this work. It's really important work. You'll see very big glamorous projects like the middle school discussed here, and you'll also see less glamorous but very important projects in here like roof replacements and HVAC replacements and things like that. So Mike Goddard and his team manage this work for us, along with colleagues in the facilities maintenance team when it comes to those big capital maintenance items. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike to share with you our progress to date and talk about what's ahead.
Thank you, Kim. Go ahead to the next slide. First of all, it's important to discuss how we prioritize the work that we do. Just for everybody's awareness, some of you have seen this a million times, some of you haven't. But here's an outline of our prioritization schedule. And I'm not going to read it all to you, but it's as you would expect, it has to do with legal mandate, code requirements, health and safety, all the way down to like to have sort of things. So we can go on from there. Also, it's important to understand our process for prioritizing projects and our process for identifying projects. There's kind of 2 tracks for that. One is the CIP process. These are line item projects. And basically what we do with these projects is ask for specific funding from City Council directly for one individual process. That's the process we used for larger projects like the Buford project, for instance. And basically the way that works is that we take facility condition assessments. We do those on a 5-year cycle, as well as need assessments that we get from the city schools. FD staff does prioritization. That's usually me. And then we bring it to the city's or the school CIP committee, which is a group made up of council members, school board members, city council, city manager, et cetera. And then we bring it to the city manager for city council approval. We also have lump sums, and this is an interesting way of handling some of our emergent needs. We have some lump sum funds that are given to us by city council that we can use in a more discretionary manner. We use 2 of those funds, one for smaller, one for larger projects. And it's a little more of a indirect feed on those. Different people basically tell me what they need and we try and make it work as best we can. And usually we can do that. So we've had quite a lot of work going on this year, so much that it's making us all tired, I think. We have the middle school reconfiguration, which I think everybody's very well aware of. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Greenbrier modernization, Johnson modernization, phase 1, and some other less visually interesting projects, we've got some electrical equipment upgrades in this building, which are actually fairly extensive and expensive. And it's work that you probably would never see. It's all hidden in mechanical rooms, but it's all very important. We have a new roof that's going onto this building in 3 phases. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 is upcoming. Phase 3 will follow. We did a bunch of little roof replacement projects around the city school buildings. We managed some drainage problems at Clark. And we are working currently on the CCS admin building, doing some ADA and security upgrades. So first, the middle school reconfiguration. We can go on past this slide because it's less interesting than what follows. This is a fairly current snapshot of what the middle school looks like. Screen left there is the operational middle school building. And I think you can imagine how challenging that is for everybody, both on the construction side and on the school side, keeping that school running while we're digging very large holes in the ground and unfortunately finding tons of stone in the ground, which is expensive, but that's another story. We can carry on. Just some more shots of retaining walls being built and holes being dug. In the background there, you can see where they're digging geothermal wells to help with the heating and cooling of the school, make it more efficient. Interestingly, we're working to get a grant to pay for a lot of that work. Hopefully we'll get, well, it'd be nice if we got about 6 million back, but we'll see. Everything is to be determined. We can carry on. And here are the renderings of what the school should look like when we're complete. On the left of your screen is what the building, the A building that currently exists will look like when we're done renovating it. On the right-hand side, you see the building that we're building right now, what will sit on top of that big trench in the ground. Another shot of the back side of the building. This is kind of looking towards the opposite side. On your right there is the existing A building cafeteria. The little terrace there is where a lot of us dug dirt a few months ago to kick off the project. Straight ahead in that image is the new building that we're building right now, and to the left is the gym building. And this is a view as it will be seen from the playfield, looking up towards the building. Again, on the right is the new gym building. On the sort of center of your screen is the big new building we're building right now. And on the left is the Boys and Girls Club. We are also working on the Greenbrier modernization. Actually, work is completed there. We did a library modernization there. I think it was a very successful project. Came in on budget, came in on time, and reports from the school, this happens to be where my kids go to school, are very positive, at least according to my children. I don't know about anybody else. Go to the next slide. That's kind of a composite of what it looks like now. I think it's a pretty nice library space. So this is the second modernization that has involved a library upfit, and both of those I think have been fairly successful. Libraries, as it turns out, are the center of a successful school, in my personal opinion. Next up is the Johnson modernization, which we've completed phase 1 of. Phase 2 is a little complex. Phase 1 involved new furnishings and some technology upgrades, new paint. Phase 2 is a roof terrace, which this rendering clips off probably the most important part of what should be shown, which is kind of the vista from this terrace. This terrace is meant to sit on top of the existing gym building. So it's basically taking what has been a closed off roof section and turning it into a usable space for learning or gathering or whatever you like. It's going to be nice. And we do have a contract just now to begin work next summer to get this finished. Some other stuff that we're working on, as I mentioned, CHS electrical switchgear. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 is complete. Phase 3 is upcoming. I could go into all the details of what we're replacing, but it would bore you all to tears. But rest assured, it's very important. The roof replacement, as I said, is finished with Phase 1. We're headed into Phase 2 now. And then after Phase 2 is complete, we're going to put a solar array on Phase 2. Phase 3 will begin sort of simultaneously. And then we are hoping to put more solar. The entire roof is solar ready. So there are some issues that we need to work through about how Dominion wants to sort of pinch our ability to put a full-scale solar array on that roof, but we're working through it and hopefully we'll come to a positive conclusion there. And then some small roof replacements. As I mentioned, you'll see little buildings all around the city. Probably the nearest one are the ticket booths over at the stadium, which we just put new roofs on. Clark Drainage, this was an interesting little project where there are those handicap ramps that go down into the basement level of Clark, kind of on either side of the grand entry from the playfield side of the school. Those were all drained by one small floor drain, and there are big oak trees that sit over those, and 2 or 3 of those oak leaves would cover the drain, and then water would just pour in the area. So we put in some long linear drains to kind of help save that, and added some more area drains at the bottom. Not that interesting, but it does keep, hopefully, the cafeteria from flooding so that we can follow up with a flooring replacement project down there. And the administration building, you see an image there of the work that's ongoing there. I think we're a little further along than that now. That's kind of a dated image, but we are adding some security for the people who sit right up in the front of the building. Also, there was not really any ADA access. The building was built back when that wasn't considered important, I guess. So we're adding an ADA restroom, doing some minor finish replacements, and remediating asbestos tile that was kind of all throughout that building under the carpet. So our plan for fiscal years 25 through 29, so we do all of our CIP planning on a 5-year cycle. So we ask for money for things kind of way ahead of time to put it on the city's radar. The most immediate, which is actually in design right now, is a restroom reconfiguration for this building. This was kind of a priority response to some emerging needs that were brought to our attention by Kim. And essentially what we're trying to achieve is more privacy for students in the restrooms while also making the restrooms a little more easy to control. Yeah, thank you for the jump ahead so that you can see what we're trying to achieve. So there'll be gender neutral single occupancy restrooms with a shared lavatory facility. This kind of helps with a few problems that we might have, one being security and sort of disruptive behavior in the restrooms, but also the question of who belongs in what restroom is kind of made moot when you reorganize a restroom in this way. So that's okay. You can jump back. Thank you. The Burnley Moran roof, I guess let's just go forward and I'll go through these in their order. So the CHS restrooms, first floor, this is, the plan right now is to do 2 restrooms in this building. So restrooms are incredibly expensive to do. So we have to kind of pick them off 1 or 2 at a time. I think our plan is to get 2 done this coming summer. And so this is what the first floor restroom will look like. And we can jump to the next one. And then we've got another one on the second floor that we're planning on picking off this summer. And we have a little bit more of a floor plan that'll give you, if you can see it, some kind of an idea of what that's going to look like. So restrooms that are kind of on the right-hand side of the image there, kind of like a single cell, not very large, but big enough for one person to go in. Of course, also some ADA restrooms are included. And then kind of a common lavatory area, which is viewable from the hallway so that staff can keep an eye on what's happening there. And the similar concept, but on a smaller scale for the second floor restroom. And these are nearing completion in schematic design. And so we are going to start into putting together a big bid package for those pretty quickly. And hopefully we can get it bid and built this coming summer. This one was kind of a rush, so hopefully we'll get it done. Do you want to jump back to the list? Because I don't have images for all of those, but I'll run through them quickly. We've also requested funding for the Burnley Moran roof replacement. This went into our budget request last year, so this is just a continuation of that request. Jackson Via will follow. So this is a fiscal year 27 and 28. You'll see one for 29 as well that'll follow a little later in the presentation. We're upgrading the CHS generators, so hopefully we can make the CHS gyms an emergency response space so that they can handle people, the public, if there's some sort of an emergency that requires it. We also have the CHS turf field replacement coming up, which that is not $900, but more like $900,000, maybe more like $1 million. I don't know. And that's just to replace the turf covering on the field. There may be some conversation about how that goes down, but the funding request is out there. The Jackson Via modular classrooms. This is a emergent problem that we're trying to come up with a solution for. So we don't really have a funding request as yet, but we're working on coming up with a solution to what may be some crowding at Jackson Via due to some new housing that is being opened.
Mike, real quick there, can you, for our newer cohort, just explain just the capacity study, just quickly, the capacity study that was done and which schools have the site clearance for?
Certainly.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Quickly, yeah. Long story, very short. Years ago, what was it, 10-ish years ago, maybe, that we started that whole, and then more like 8 years ago, we started the process. Yeah, okay, 7 or 8 years ago. It seemed as if the schools were growing very quickly, but they were going to outlive their capacity very, very soon. In fact, most of them were above functional capacity at the time. So we hired an architecture firm to do a study and tell us where we stood. The result was that we were over capacity for the most part, some schools worse than others. And we set about trying to figure out where we would put modular classrooms for an emergency situation on each of the class or each of the school sites. We accomplished that on all but the Jackson Via site due to some site issues that were pretty difficult to solve. Then COVID hit. We didn't really have to worry about capacity for a little while there. So that one kind of fell off the radar, busy as we are. And lo and behold, it seems like we may be having an emerging capacity issue again. And surprise, surprise, it's at the one school where we don't have a ready solution. So we're working on it, but hopefully we can get it solved faster than the problem becomes critical. Okay, so these are the new requests for our budget for FY 25 through 29. First was the pre-K center at the Walker campus. I don't know if anybody's ever thought about that or is thinking about it currently, but there's been some talk about a pre-K center at Walker. So we put that request in for fiscal year 27. That's a little bit movable, I think, but it's intended to follow right on the heels of the Charlottesville Middle School completion. The Johnson Elementary roof replacement, that's just the third in that series of roof replacements. Seems like we always replace school roofs in series, so there we go. By the way, each of those school roof replacements is meant to have a solar component as well. And we're working with our friends over in the Office of Sustainability to try and figure out how that gets funded, whether it's direct cash funding or whether we do a PPE or something like that. Clark window replacement, we asked for some money to replace a lot of windows over at Clark because they were failing before their time. There was a bad design of some windows that we bought about 15 years ago. And so we're going to have to replace a lot of them. And that 450,000 is a partial request. It's actually probably $1 million worth of windows that we'll ultimately have to replace. But we're phasing it so that we can afford it, frankly. And then we've got phase 1 of classroom air conditioning unit replacement program. So updating AC units. We have some AC units still in classrooms that are using old refrigerants that you can't get anymore and that are hazardous to the environment. So we're trying to replace those as quickly as we can so that we don't have to worry about that. Is that it? All right. Well, I'm surprised as you are that that's the end. Thank you.
All right, any questions? Ms. Heaphy? Any questions? Mr. Meyer? All right, just remember,
Chair,
we
thank
know
you.
this is your passion area.
It is my passion area, and thank you, Mike. You're not allowed to leave your job either, and great to hear you're in Greenbrier. Your kids are there. Yeah, just a couple questions and one, I didn't see buses on here. Is there electric buses anyway? I know there's a lot of money out there right at the moment that we're considering.
So Mike and his team and the CIP work exclusively with building facilities and grounds projects. So that wouldn't be something that would run through his department based on, it would be something that could come through the Office of Sustainability in conjunction with transit would be where you would see something like that emerge.
And then you just mentioned Dominion being a problem. Is there active conversations with Dominion, and is there been political leverage taken yet? Or
I think that is outside of my scope, besides to say that there are conversations with Dominion. I'm not personally having them. I'm hopeful that there's some political pressure brought to bear so that that becomes a little easier. I think that's happening. Crystal Rittervold would be a great person to ask about that, though, because the Office of Sustainability is engaged in that conversation a little better than I. And with regard to the electric buses, if electric buses become a permanent fixture in the city, which I assume they will be, we will probably be the ones who build the facilities to charge them and make expansions at the CAP facility if that's where they're housed.
No, Ms. Burns, Mr. Morse, any questions?
Yes, I noticed that our admin building is still getting some upgrades. Curious if we have an updated timeline.
I will have to get back to you. I think we're probably about a month out on that right now. We did have some additions that we had to make because of HVAC concerns. But yeah, I think we're about a month out. I apologize.
There was a supply chain issue on the ceiling test.
Any questions, Ms. Cooper? Okay. Ms. Richardson? Thank you. Excuse me.
Sorry, Lisa.
Yes.
Just one last brief thing. I heard an observation by some public comments at the beginning about a bench that might have or might not have disappeared. I'm not blaming anybody.
Sure.
And, but
I'm glad you asked. So when we, identified the bench, which it was pretty grown up around it, it was something I've been walking past for years, didn't realize it was there. We made efforts, and I shared an email with Dr. Gurley. I went back through Jim Henderson. That was my starting point. Through him, we kind of brainstormed who had retired from here recently that we could reach out to that might know how to reach the family, because there was a spouse and one child. We figured out where the spouse was living, tried to locate them and find them, reached out to people who had been with the school division not too long ago that had retired that would have worked during that same time. We just didn't have any success in finding anyone who could help us connect with the family. to see if they would like the plaque, because we had, when we had it evaluated, facilities maintenance said there was no way to remove the bench intact because of the way it was put into the ground with footers and because of the way the top was epoxied to the two legs. So we were making efforts right up until the time where Nielsen was like, we got to put the fence up, we got to go. And so we gave them permission to remove it. And then, apologies, I checked my email when the person was making public comment. I can't find anything in the emails where I responded to the question, but depending on the time when I was asked about it, once it was removed, I mean, I didn't know where it was there for a while, but I'm quite sure when you look at it, it's gone from the campus at this point. We did make quite a bit of an effort to find the family to see if they wanted the plaque salvaged from it. And I'm truly sorry for anyone who's felt not valued or that we didn't consider it. I'm sorry we missed the mark in not talking to the right people, but there's a whole email string and I forwarded it to Dr. Gurley while we, after those comments were made. So I'm sorry.
Thank you for providing that. Appreciate your efforts.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, 11.4, Ms. Hoover, Budget Development Update.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Gurley, and school board members. This evening, I'm going to review the 2024-2026 Local Composite Index, a locality's ability to pay. It's better known as the LCI, and this information was released by the Virginia Department of Education on November 27th of 2023. So let me give you some background on the LCI. It's been in place over 50 years. It determines all the funding distribution to the school divisions in the state. And the composite index is intended to measure the locality's ability to pay for K-12 education. There are 3 indicators of the locality's ability to pay: the true market value of real estate, the Virginia adjusted gross income, and the taxable sales. Revenue indicators are the adjusted daily membership, known as the ADM, and population. These 2 indicators played a big part in our LCI calculation. So sometimes in the first year of a new biennium of the LCI, the state budget may have a hold harmless funding in it. This is usually a political pawn in the state budget process. So it's something that we don't count on until the budget is officially adopted. Each locality's index is adjusted to maintain the overall state local share of 45% and an overall state share of 55%. This slide shows the weights placed on each component of the LCI. The ADM is given the highest weight, thus it is most important of all the indicators. This table shows the 2024-2026 LCI compared to prior biennium periods. The LCI is updated in the odd number years. There's a time lag between the data elements that inform the process and the current actual market data. You'll notice for the 2024-2026 biennium, the base year for the indicators is 2021. The results of using the data elements that are 2 years old make key budget revenue calculations out of date. Our LCI increased by 7.5% from the 2022-2024 biennium. This makes Charlottesville's LCI at 77.02% effective July 1st of 2024. And this is the beginning of our fiscal year 2025, which we're going into budget development. We will not know the true impacts of the LCI until the BDOE's calc tool is released. Because our LCI is high, there's a good chance our state revenues will be down. The higher the LCI, the greater the ability to pay for the locality's ability to pay for education. This next slide, there's 134 school divisions in the state. 10 school divisions are at the maximum LCI. There are Arlington, Bath, Goochland, Highland, Lancaster, Rappahannock, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax City. Charlottesville is the second highest. The state average is 40.32%, and our lowest is Radford. So I mentioned to you that the ADM was a key weight in the LCI. Our ADM decreased in that base year 2021 due to the pandemic. That had a very significant impact on our LCI and our population.
Ms. Hoover, do you by chance know, I mean, just across the board, all other divisions, were they affected the same way? Are they all being hit? Have you looked at trends to see if?
We compared ourselves to Albemarle, and you'll see that later in the slide. But no, I didn't go into depth and look at all the other school divisions. But most of the school divisions, ADM did decrease because of the pandemic.
I mean, wouldn't it be nice if our legislators considered that and
well, that's the reason I
maybe-
mentioned to you the
I
hold
know.
harmless is
Yeah,
that's where the hold harmless money would come into play. This next slide is the three indicators of the locality's ability to pay. The higher we're higher than the state average. And then this slide compares us to Albemarle County. And you can see our values moved pretty much in the same direction as Albemarle's. Next slide. I just want to remind everybody, these are the budget priorities that we're going to use as we go through the 2025 budget development process. And then these are our key dates. We will come back in 2 weeks on Thursday, January 18th, to present the budget changes from the 2024 budget to start developing the 2025 budget.
You anticipate we'll have the calc tool by then?
Oh, we hope so. I'm looking every day for it.
I bet.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there any questions?
So, yeah, well, you don't have the exact number. What is there gonna be? I think this year we have $25 million we're expecting from the state or budgeting. What do you think might be the change from them for next year?
I can't tell you. I mean, on average, our percentage of state revenue is around 24%. And it's been consistent between 23 and 24% for the last 5 years. So, well, let's hope that that stays the same.
Any questions down here to my left? To the right? Go ahead.
Just as we're developing our agenda for next week's meeting with City Council, this seems like the LCI piece would probably be a helpful component for council members to understand, so that if the state funding goes down, the ask of our locality is going to increase. And so helping them to understand where that is coming from would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's, and just since you brought that up, Ms. Dooley, too. So and for the newer board members, we typically have a meeting with council where we kind of present the superintendent's budget or proposed budget and kind of discuss the changes that we'd like to see. This meeting is an extra meeting, so which is a great opportunity to kind of introduce, allow us to sit with them, and also to meet Counselor Oshrin and just kind of talk. And they have asked for a couple of things for us to be prepared to talk with them about. But definitely, I think this is kind of a nice segue to prep us into coming into that following meeting, which will be the budget. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the repetition of this every year. You know, I think it becomes a little bit easier. So I appreciate that.
All right. We will have Ms. Lewis and Mr. Herndon with our recruitment presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley. Tonight, we're going to share recruitment and retention plan for the 22-23, we're going to go backwards, 23-24 school year. Josh Herndon joined the team in July. He's an HR coordinator for the division, and he brings to us with experience from the classroom and from building administration. So he's leading the efforts with recruitment for us. And I'll be a backup support.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Madam Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Gurley, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight our game plan for recruiting and retaining the best and brightest teachers for our buildings and for our students and for our community. So I want to highlight a few of the main ideas in our presentation and provide you with an overview of all the great things that we're currently doing, and also some innovative approaches to how we're going to, again, recruit the best and brightest teachers for Charlottesville City. So I want to begin by looking at a quote. I'm a quote guy. And so better suggests a journey of constant improvement and makes us feel like we are being invited to contribute our talents and our energies to make progress in that journey. Better in the infinite game is better than best. And so I believe that this quote represents something that unites us regardless of the role that we play in our school division, whether that's as a school board member, as a member of our community, as a teacher, or as a building administrator, or a custodian, or a school nutrition worker. Like I said, we contribute our talents and energy to make progress and continuously improve. A common vision, a common mission focused on continuous improvement for our students and our community. That is the theme that you will see throughout our presentation this evening, continuous improvement. As a former building principal, I've always had to remind myself that it's not a sprint, that it's a marathon, and that this work, it takes time. Culture change takes time. And so our focus is to embrace the growth process. All right, next slide, please. And so I believe that in any endeavor, you must begin with a clear vision and a clear mission to unite the efforts of everybody involved in the organization. And so our vision for staffing in Charlottesville City is to become the preferred destination for teachers, administrators, and support staff throughout the state of Virginia. Our mission is to be fully staffed in each building with appropriately licensed and endorsed and diverse teachers and administrators dedicated to meeting the needs of all students. And I promise I'm not going to read from every slide. I just needed to get through those first couple there. Okay, next. So I believe that everything that we do in Charlottesville City should point back and align with the goals in our strategic plan. This slide includes the specific targets embedded in our strategic plan with measurable goals. Something that I appreciate about our division strategic plan is the focus on continuous improvement. So to know the next steps to continuous improvement, I believe there must be an awareness of where we currently are. The next 8 slides will provide you with an overview of where we currently are. It provides context of what is going on around the state, but then brings it back to a focus on Charlottesville City Schools. So the data in this graph represents the licensed staff hired to our school division for school year 2023, 2024. Our goal continues to be to make annual progress toward hiring licensed staff of color and for our staff minority representation to match or exceed our city's demographics. I want to draw your attention to the number one reason teachers are leaving the profession in the state of Virginia. So if you look at that bar graph, 75% of teachers in the state of Virginia are leaving the profession due to inadequate support for teachers. I believe that if we focus our efforts on supporting our staff, the other areas highlighted will take care of themselves. You take a look, the workload was too high. Another reason cited, school leadership was ineffective or inadequate salary. Feel that based on what I've heard from other colleagues and our focus on support for our students and support for our staff, I'm confident that we'll continue to be able to retain our teachers. And you'll see later in the presentation that the staff retention rate, it has improved between last year and this year. But as I was saying, I believe that if we can continue supporting our teachers, continue supporting our staff, these other areas, the workload being too high or ineffective school leadership or inadequate salary, those things will take care of themselves as we look to continue supporting our staff. Next slide, please. So to bring that back to more local, you'll notice the two highest cited reasons for teachers leaving Charlottesville City Schools were for personal reasons and new opportunities. Personal reasons can mean many different things. Every situation is unique for each individual. New opportunities can include starting a career in a different field, accepting a position in a different location, beginning a new program at a university or a training program, and some include transitioning to staying at home with children. Next, please. Looking statewide, what you'll notice in this graph is a huge discrepancy between newly licensed teachers and then the number of teachers leaving. And so what we see is a deficit of 5,482 teachers across the state that all school divisions are trying to make up for. Next, please. So taking a look at our current needs, yes, the next three slides provide information about our current needs across our school division that we will look to fill at the job fairs that I'm going to describe here in a few slides. The first two slides show the positions by building and the third by department. Like I said, I'm not going to read every single piece of this slide. You can see there. As of now, I believe we have an update, and Ms. Lewis, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but we should be at 26 total positions vacant. We were able to fill one of those positions since the creation of this slide. Okay, again, by building. And then the slide describing by department where our openings are. Okay. All right, so looking at retention in Charlottesville City, as I mentioned earlier, our retention rates have improved since last year. And I had to make sure I highlighted this picture of Dr. Gurley breaking it down at our staff welcome back in August. I believe he's dancing because of these increases in our percentages. So the retention rates as of September 2023, if you look division wide, we increased by 0.3%. If you look at our teachers, 1.14% increase, and administratively 12.6% increase. All right, I know there's a lot of words on that slide there. And again, I'm not going to bore you by reading every single word on there, but these are just, this is an overview And there are some things I did not put on the slide, but this is a list of a lot of the efforts that our staff throughout the buildings and at the central office level, the efforts being made to retain our staff and support them. One of the roles that I really am passionate about and was able to come in and have the opportunity to do was meet with each of our new staff members to the division at day 30, at day 60, and day 90. And Ms. Lewis, that was one of her ideas, and it's been a, it's been really fun getting to go into the buildings, meet with all of our new staff, talk with them, and create a connection between the buildings and central office. I feel like that was one of the things, one of the goals was to bridge a gap between the buildings and central office so that if a teacher has a question, they have a point of contact. If that's not just an HR question, but anything, one of our new staff might need to know who to contact if they have a certain need. Having that early meeting with them provided them that access. So one of the things also that, working in a few different school divisions, one of the things that has really impressed me with Charlottesville City Schools is the professional learning program that is offered to our teachers. They have a lot of choice in the just professional learning opportunities offered by our division leaders. And through the division-wide professional learning days or school-based professional learning, there's, like I said, there's a plethora of opportunities for our new staff and all of our teachers to engage in professional learning. All right, some of the highlights, again, unique to Charlottesville City Schools from that list is support for our novice teachers and our mentoring program. We have embedded school-based supports for all teachers, whether that's through department leads, grade level leads, professional learning communities. And the new staff, that was one of the common themes when I spoke to our new staff and I asked them how well they're feeling supported. Oh, sorry. They talked a lot about their colleagues stepping in, checking on them. They talked a lot about their department. Come on, Pat. No, I think we're good now. But no, so the teachers were talking a lot about the support that they felt from their colleagues, from their building administrators. Thanks. All right, I think we're good. Say that again. Oh, okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so in a lot of the meetings when I met with the new teachers to our division, if you've ever read Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, one of the things that he talks about is being able to speak to understand how somebody receives love, how somebody demonstrates love. And so as a building principal, that was one of the things that I tried to focus on was learning how the teachers receive support. And because I can support somebody in one way, but if that doesn't communicate support to them, that's not going to register as support. And so I think our building administrators have done an excellent job getting to know their staff one-to-one. And that was one of the things that the new teachers to our division said was, I feel supported. I feel like they're present. I feel like if I have a need, I can go talk to them. But anyway, so that was one of the questions I asked was, what does teacher support look like for you? And in the first round of meetings, I met with 57 of our new staff, and some of the responses, they said support looks like specific feedback on how I can improve. And that was encouraging. Sometimes people are a little bit sensitive about getting feedback, but the new staff was saying, I want feedback. I want to get better. Next one was one-to-one check-ins from administrators. The third one there, administrative presence, like I mentioned earlier, availability. If there was a concern, that staff member wants to know that, they can go and talk to an administrator if there's a concern. Words of encouragement, affirmation, and acknowledgement. The other one was clear expectations. And I think we can all agree, we all want to know what's expected of us and to help us have a target of what we need to do to be successful. And then lastly, timely communication and a response. So to change gears from retention to recruitment, looking at our teacher recruitment fairs that we are looking at in 2024, especially here in the next month. We're looking at attending 9 job fairs across the state in different locations. You know, we have the typical James Madison University, UVA, Christopher Newport. There's a diversity in education virtual teacher job fair. There's a HBCU and minority serving institutions virtual career fair that we're going to participate in March. Norfolk State this fall in 2024, we will have presence there. William and Mary, Bridgewater, and of course, our own Charlottesville City Schools job fair that is, we're hosting that Saturday, February 3rd. And we were intentional about doing the job fair earlier this year because when I look at a lot of these other scheduled recruitment fairs, we wanted to be first. We wanted to make sure that we had our job fair first before these other ones so that when these college graduates or the other teachers, we get first pick if, when they come. And, I think back to my days right out of college, came to the job fair over in Harrisonburg and it was February. Got an offer and I was done interviewing. And so I want to make sure that Charlottesville City has that first opportunity. So yeah, and that's going to be an all hands on deck type of operation. We're going to have by Monday, January 8th, we're going to have those jobs posted. We're going to have some kind of a blast like presence of the job fair so that those teachers can get on there, register electronically, and our administrative staff can get on there and start making phone calls to set up those meetings. And so on Saturday, February 3rd from 10 to 2, that's when we're going to hold our job fair here in Charlottesville City. Another way to create pipelines and partnerships. I'm so
Mr.
sorry.
Herndon, yeah.
Sorry. What are you doing to market the job fair now?
Yes, ma'am. So what our game plan is I wanted to make sure that I communicated the game plan with our current building administrators first. And then we're going to work with our communications department to leverage social media presence, and some of the other local outlets around this area. And Ms. Lewis, I might need some help. This is
It'll be posted on the division website, on job placements boards. Piedmont Virginia Community College has a placement board as well. So we'll use some of those college outlets to post the information.
Can you speak in the mic?
Do we have a time frame of when that will happen?
The meeting with communications is transpiring tomorrow. So once we have an update from communications on the new markup communication document, as soon as that's available, it'll be posted. They'll give us an update, but I anticipate it'll be Monday or Tuesday next week. It'll show up on our website, and then the proliferation of going out to the other spaces, that'll happen within the week. So then the posting is going to be up on our job posting board for 2 weeks for people to come in and apply. We're going to do a more broad scope of having elementary and secondary so that all of our elementary principals can interview any of the candidates that are under elementary. All of our secondary principals can interview anybody that's under secondary. We get feedback from them and they tell us who they're interviewing, and then we'll set up additional interviews with committees as well.
So how do we know what openings we have for next year? Like teachers have they filled out their intent forms?
So the intent form has been delayed just slightly for this 2% increase. As soon as we get the 2% increase communication out on Monday, we'll send out that intention form. So that's really, you don't want to send out the form before, so the timeline's just delayed just slightly. By the job fair, we will have, as far as HR, we'll have the data as to the intent form. The intent form will go out. If not, I anticipate the day after Martin Luther King Day. And then they have been given historically 2 weeks, which will close the window before the job fair.
So when candidates are submitting interest,
That's
it's
why
like
it's gonna
a
say
generic, like
elementary. It's gonna-
elementary or
Elementary
secondary?
placement, secondary placement. The ones that are very specific
Uh-huh.
are like a custodian, reading specialist, jobs that will require a different endorsement instead of just an elementary endorsement.
And where will this take place, the job fair?
It takes place here at the high school.
Here at the high school.
So we'll organize the fair to happen with people entering at the front entrance. And then that lobby right outside of B Commons, or in between A Commons and B Commons, will be school setup tables for each one of the schools. The HR team will have a calendar that says Maria is being interviewed by Burley Moran at 10 o'clock. So each one of our principals will have teams of individuals. Typically, it's how it is. They decide if they want to interview AP and principal, or if they want to have teachers and reading specialists, but they'll identify their teams and have a set spot. And this space will also be used.
Okay. And are students included in that?
Yes.
Just as a welcoming
So in
environment?
the past, and we'll get that communication out to our history teachers, we've had students from the history classes doing that welcoming of staff, just like they get community service points for being at the school board meeting. This will be an opportunity for them to get additional community service points, helping, supporting people to the right location. They know the facility. So if I said the classroom D212, they could actually escort the candidate to that placement.
And will any of our community partners be invited to that event to speak to community engagement?
We're open to as many volunteers and supports as possible. So again, we're going to work with communications on tomorrow and start to solicit or publish that solicitation. And as we learn of community partners, certainly work with Dr. Denise Johnson with our volunteers to figure out what additional partners can join.
Thank you.
We happily invite.
And this will be our third annual fair. The
Mhm.
last two have been very well attended. I think very successful events and.
21 individuals were hired from our last year's.
Yep. And we also had, when you spoke of students, we also had, I remember in 2 cases where we had students who sat on interview panels.
That's
One
correct.
was an LMA student for a teaching position. So we did have some students who sat in on the interview process to select their teacher.
It takes the community, so we'll all be working together for the success of bringing in those candidates early on. And as Josh said, we want to catch them early.
All right, so we've discussed a lot of these. One of the things I wanted to highlight is a new approach to recruiting. And so one of the things that, so if you imagine you were a new teacher and coming out of college and you've got a lot of different options of where you are interested in teaching, and you go to our new updated website, looks nice, visually appealing, and then you see a student video or a student testimonial about how much value they're gaining from being a member of our school community. and also teachers. So teacher and students as ambassadors providing testimonials for what makes Charlottesville City Schools a unique and special place to work and call home. And then we would post these also to the various social media accounts and our school division's website. Also looking at potentially a referral program, like providing rewards for current Charlottesville City staff who refer or bring in teachers from colleges or other divisions. And also participation in virtual teacher recruitment fairs. Next slide, please. So I wanted to end on a quote as well. This is something that's been a quote that is, personal to me as I want to be, a better father and also a better professional and better school leader. So our focus is on better today than yesterday and better tomorrow than today. Next. Any other questions?
Mr. Myers? No?
Yes, thank you for that presentation. There's a lot of information. I really appreciate it and appreciated the quotes, the beginning and end. A couple things. One, just along the lines of on the retention side, you had some good stats there. I don't know if we can go back that slide. And we've improved year on year, which is great to see. How do we compare though to other districts and or the state level? Do we know that or not?
I don't know those statistics off the top of my head. I could do some research for you and
then the other thing is that I think we're doing a lot of great things and you have a lot of, what are areas though that we need to improve upon that we're not doing great at? And not trying to lay blame on anybody, but where can we do better, do you think? On the retention side, sorry.
One of the strategic plan goals is to ensure that we're recruiting a diverse teacher population. And there are times that we do recruit and they're here for a period of time and they depart. So that's an area of weakness for us. We need to recruit them, but then after 3 or 4 years, we need to really have them sustained in our community for a longer stint of time. So we've had waves of high diversity placement, and then 4 years later, we have a dip in that diversity. That's what I've noticed over the last 5 years or so.
So, but yeah, getting a little bit, drilling down a little bit on that retention side of things though, what are things we can do better to, again, retain the diverse teachers, but all our teachers and our staff administrators?
Well, that's going to be a challenge for the community. Not all, the people aren't necessarily leaving because of things that's happening at Charlottesville City. Some of them are leaving for the culture, the entertainment, the other things that a larger city provides them. And that's going to be a competitive force no matter what we do.
Okay,
They're
so
going to say, Charlottesville does not have as much entertainment as a city like.
okay, but just to understand, you're saying there's nothing that we can do better? Sorry.
I can't make Charlottesville City, the city better.
Right.
I can certainly make the environment better.
I think one thing we've heard, and we've had these conversations through some of our equity discussions, Black people want to see Black people, and you don't see Black people, you may not see I don't have the social outlets within the community. I don't have the professional network. And so I think that that's been, when we ask, a lot of times when we're asking our employees of color, like, why are you leaving? I just don't feel connected to the community. And so I think that that's where we can partner collaboratively with our city and other places. You want spaces, and I know that personally speaking for myself, there are a few networks, but it's not like if I were living in the city of Richmond, the professional networks just don't look the same, and et cetera.
Ms. Burns, any questions? Mr. Morse? Ms. Cooper? No? Ms. Dooley?
I mean, I don't know, Mr. Myers, if there was something specific that you were getting at there. If you wanted to just say it, that would be helpful. I think like one thing that is on our minds all the time that would help with recruitment and retention is compensation, right? And so that is something that we are consistently looking at to pay our teachers more. We know some of the reasons why they're leaving is because you can't afford to live in Charlottesville. And so I think those are all elements that we are very much aware of. But if there's additional pieces that you think we can be doing, certainly share them.
No, there, again, new, I saw a lot of great things that we're doing, but right, is it compensation? Is it, okay, we need to have a program to connect our teachers and staff of color to other networks here. Okay, great. You know, is there, you talked about supporting our principals supporting their teams, and do we have enough admin staff to actually provide feedback to all those teachers or not? Are they getting the feedback they need or not? And do we need a program to do that? I mean, those are just kind of the things I was potentially hoping to hear, that again, that we've heard that again would maybe help improve retention. There was a list of things at the state level why folks are leaving. We didn't necessarily see that specifically broken down here, though.
Well, maybe you guys can speak to, like, the exit interviews. It's not, we don't always get that level of specificity that would be very helpful, but I don't know if you guys can speak to that.
So the people that are transparent with their departures are often saying it's because of relocation, advancement, or personal reasons. When you go through and try to peer down or drill down to the personal reasons, there's a myriad of reasons that people provide, but they're going to check the box personal reason so as not to expose themselves when you're going through the interview. So there are one-on-one exit interviews, and they'll tell you explicitly there wasn't the support in the classroom with the group of students I'm working with or the administration. And we take that data and support our administrators by providing that cyclical approach of saying, we need to shore up these systems here when we do hear that information. But their preferred method is to just put personal when none of the others apply.
Ms. Richardson, any questions? My follow-up question had to do with the 30, 60, 90, which I think is great. So you mentioned, so along the lines of Mr. Meyer's questions, I guess, so when you're getting feedback from them, I mean, we listed things that they felt positive about, but if there are areas of concern, what does that look like? Are you taking it, like you said, Ms. Lewis, straight to the admin in that building?
So sometimes it affects the structure or the systems that are working in the school building, and we can actually provide communication support to the school to say, we need to make sure we firm up this area or focus. When it comes to feedback with evaluation, I can also go into the classroom, do walkthroughs with administration as well. But since we're doing this at 30 days in, we're getting that data really early so that we can respond. So administrators are grateful to hear the information of here's how I can support my staff.
So 30, 60, 90 days, correct?
Right. So within
Now,
the
how about,
first
how
month-
about, can we like extend that out to the end of the school year so that we get some follow-up and see if any concerns that they're bringing forward might have been resolved? I mean, would that be
We
helpful?
certainly can extend it. This is a time of year where we're ramping up with recruitment and just other commitments within HR. So that's why the window initially was 30, 60, 90, when HR typically has a more availability. But we can certainly work that into our schedules moving forward.
Yeah, and not to burden you or to take away, but I think 90 days is still pretty fresh in, you know, if you're starting a new job. So to get somewhere, somehow get some feedback that might mirror, and I don't know if you ask the same questions, you know, if you have a script or, you know, if you're keeping a file and then following up on their responses individually, but I think it would be worthwhile to, you know, even maybe if it's the mentor that's assigned to them that can follow up somehow and get information back to you all. I don't know, just. I've been working at a job for 24 years, and today was the first time in 24 years for the same company that they did something similar to that. And it's just, it was a new manager. And I was like, oh my gosh, do you really have the time? Do you want to hear from me? 24 years worth. But I think it's no matter how long you've been there, there's feedback that's valid,
So
you know?
it's not a 10-minute conversation, it's more like an
No, but it's
hour.
really worth it. And along your lines, Mr. Herndon, do better. We can all do better, right? No matter, I mean, I can do better as a 24-year veteran in my position. So, I mean, I think, I mean, and an employee being heard and having that follow-up, I think matters. And not just for our first-year employees, but just my opinions and my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. The 30, 60, 90 is, that's the vision that it's happening every 30 and 60, 90 with a lot of schedules and trying to protect teacher planning time and trying to protect the collaboration time. I just know that sometimes I might hit the one building at 30, the next building was at 40. So the 3690 is the vision. And making it all the way to 90. I guess I say that to say it has extended out a little bit. It's not exactly at 30, 60, 90.
Or at least, or just sending them an invitation if you'd like another follow-up.
Right,
Definitely
right.
don't want to take away from their time, but just as an
And I love
option.
the suggestion of the mentors. Each one of these individuals largely are coupled with a mentor as they transition into Charlottesville City Schools. That's another opportunity for us to check in.
And I know that they do have those scheduled times with their mentor. I know that there's the professional learning
you're right.
aspect has like they have those structures in place already where they're meeting consistently with their mentor and mentee and so yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I just go back to you real quick on compensation and hit that a little bit more? Do we pay the best?
We do pay the best.
Okay, by a lot or a little or barely?
Barely with the, we're moderately, we're barely above.
Is there other monetary compensation that we should be offering that we don't?
So one additional compensation that's not always at every school division around us are the supplements for degrees or supplements for being a department lead or a reading specialist. Last year, or 2 years ago, actually, we identified elementary leads and they received additional compensation. So there are avenues to add additional funding, but yes, we're just barely above.
I think it's one of those things where sometimes we all in our region are looking at each other and seeing what we're paying and we're just nudging each other out. And so sometimes you're right at it. You may be just a little bit below because someone else gave 1% more. So it's always just this thing where as a region, we are nudging each other. And I think really our competitor is the county.
Yeah.
And so we sit just above them. And I know we've talked even about, like, we have this compensation study and like, what do we do with it, knowing that it costs a whole lot of money to even try to entertain the thought of implementing it. And so it's a conversation that can be had, but I mean, just off the top, you're talking about millions of dollars.
Mr. Meyer, to answer your question more directly about something that we might be able to do. I had a conversation today with one of our first year teachers, and he wants to go back to school and continue his education, earn a master's degree. One of the things I think we could do or to improve would be our tuition reimbursement. I think if I'm correct, it's $500 per year. When you look at the price of each course to continue your education, it's pretty expensive. And $500 a year, I think maybe that's not even half of what a course would cost. Yeah, it's not. I'm taking classes at Youngstown State University. And I know for a fact that $500 would not go very far. I'm not saying that
But we could.
Saying I
we
appreciate
c-
it, but I'm just saying.
Right, we could pay more though, and then could we also require if we give you more that you stick around? Something like that, or not? I mean, I think that's a lot of the retention programs usually work with. To get
Say that
rid-
again, please.
You pay more, but then you're required to stay the next year or something like that. You know, there's a quid pro quo. Anyways, I hope we're thinking creatively. My point here being is thinking creatively, and again, as I think Lisa, and sorry, member Ms. Torres and Ms. Dooley mentioned, is we're talking to the budget next week, and would love to have some talking points on, because we have 29 staff members, or 27 that we don't have, right? And some of that is compensation related. So what do we need to actually adequately staff and attract that staff and keep it from a compensation perspective? And I just want to make sure we have those numbers and can be able to articulate that to the city. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that wraps up our items for discussion. And the next item is 12.0, which is board response to written reports. And this is a part of our agenda where the school board committee reports would be where you would be able to access a summary of the different committees or things that board members have done in the previous month. And then we are including here a report for outcome of student disciplinary matters, and then the proposed school board committee assignment. So that has action by it. Are we taking action on that, or was that? No, okay. So anyway, that, and we will, so those are available and posted for people to review those. And then we will move forward to our next opportunity for comments from members of the community. So, yeah, if there's somebody actually that's behind you that hasn't, so if you let her go first, and then absolutely, you're welcome to come up again, but just state your full name, your address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for your service and welcome to the new board members. My name is Karen Little. I am a parent of a 10th grader here at CHS and an 8th grader at Beaufort. And I've worked in public education for 20 plus years. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I was really shocked and actually sad to hear the staff recommend the metal detectors. And shocked because there's no evidence that supports the use of metal detectors in making schools safe. And in fact, they actually make students feel less safe. As I said, I wasn't prepared to talk tonight, and I will definitely follow up with a written statement summarizing some of the research, but I'd like to just read just a quick quote from a West Ed research brief. West Ed is a very reputable education research organization, and this is what it says. While metal detectors may provide a visible response to concerns about school safety, there is little evidence to support their effectiveness at preventing school shootings or successfully detecting weapons at schools. Equally concerning are potential unintended negative consequences associated with the use of metal detectors. Students in schools with metal detectors, which typically are schools with greater proportions of students of color, are more likely to perceive violence and disorder and less likely to feel safe than students in schools without metal detectors. School districts that are considering the use of metal detectors should consider this range of evidence. And again, I'll follow up with a written summary of the research. But I just really, I recognize the need to feel that you want to do something and have that visible sign that you're doing something to address the needs. But I really would implore you to do the hard work and listen to the research, listen to the students, listen to what the staff wants, and really address those root issues and think about how do you make policies that are going to send the message to our students that they are valued and that they belong. And metal detectors do not. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Would you like to come up again? Thank you.
repeat, my name is Jerry Lloyd, and I live at 9322 Rockfish Valley Highway in Afton, Virginia. As I said earlier, I taught in Charlottesville City Schools from 1980 to 2003. And I've truly loved it here. My entire teaching experience was at Buford Middle School, where I have developed some of the most wonderful friendships, and they still continue today. Here at Charlottesville, I was the tennis coach, and I was the tennis coach from 1980 through 1990, at which point I got married and decided to devote my time to my family. What I'm hearing tonight is that I still consider Charlottesville City students my students, even though I've not been here for over 23 years. And yet it makes me very sad to hear and see the things that are happening here within the school division. How can we expect our students to have a responsible attitude toward anything, their school, their community, when their history is being erased? There are numerous students that I had. I consider myself a great grandmother as a teacher. I still have contact with students, and they bring their children and now some of their grandchildren to me. And it's delightful. And they ask questions. What are you doing? Did you hear what's happening in Charlottesville? Yes, because I still work in Charlottesville. But the thing that makes me sad is that their history is being demolished. If you rename the schools, what's that going to do to your current teachers who went to the schools that you are now considering renaming? Where do they say they went? Oh, I used to go to Buford Middle School, but now it's called whatever. Where's their history? Where's their sense of belonging? And how do they impart that into their students? Destruction of their environments that are familiar are students who are currently within the school. They don't know what to do with that. Their frontal lobes are not completely developed to be able to know and understand that what their history is, and the lack or the demolishing of their history, their sense of place, impacts their mental attitudes. She can tell you some of that. That's important. When I walked into the building tonight, it has changed, and yet it's still kind of the same. But what's missing is the history. This building is so sterile. There's nothing that says students are here. I haven't been into the gym. I don't know where the banners are for the things that they've won. But there's nothing in this library, a wonderful resource, that says students are here. Nothing.
Ms. Lloyd, your time's up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Amy Gardner, 753 Belmont Avenue. I come from the Chris Meyer School of Questions. So I just had a lot of questions through the wonderful presentations. Thank you all very much. And I don't expect answers, but I'm just sharing them, so maybe you all will question. In the recruitment and retention, under Charlottesville High School departures, personal reasons was a box to check, but was dissatisfaction with school environment a box to check? Just if we only give people certain options, we're only going to get certain answers. So maybe we need to be expanding the options. Ms. Hoover's presentation was really interesting, and I would love a copy. I know where I can get a copy of that report, but we compare ourselves to other localities for index of what the locality's ability to pay is. Do we compare ourselves to the same localities for compensation for teachers? So I know we're doing better than Albemarle, but as a group, are we approaching Fairfax or Falls Church? Because as we all know, it's absurdly expensive to live in this city. And if I had to start over now, I couldn't do it. In the budget, K-Tech is number 2 We're number 3, and it's just above staff and teacher compensation. So I don't know what's going on with K-Tech. I admit that I don't know much about that, but I know I've seen teachers leave in the last couple years, and it worries me. Number 3, I know pre-pandemic, we had 2 full-time occupational therapists, and I know we have 1 now. So I only know this because of personal connections, but Chris, you may not know that, so I'm sharing that with you now. And I think my last question is, so Mike's presentation, amazing on all the things that are happening to the buildings. I didn't know we were going to update the gym for emergency situation, but shouldn't the city of Charlottesville pay for that? Right? Shouldn't that come out of their money and not your money? I would think so. And I think that's it. Thank you all very much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Anybody else here in the media center? All right, anybody on Zoom? Mr. Cuomo. All right, thank you. And we now will move to comments from the board. And I will start down here with Ms. Richardson.
I just want to thank everybody who presented today and also all of the feedback. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of the future plans we have unfold.
Thank you. Ms. Dooley.
I just want to take a second to respond to some of the comments about not hearing from the school board about our level of concern or stress as the last calendar year wrapped up. I apologize that I did not say that explicitly, but I hope that people know how seriously and how concerned this board was with the events as they unfolded, but then also in the months and time leading up to that. And I think it's important to just draw attention to some of the things that we have done and that we are continuing to do. You know, one of the first votes that I took as a school board member was to expand parental leave. We were one of the first divisions in the state to pass a collective bargaining resolution. And so, you know, we've had a conversation tonight that I know will be ongoing about compensation. And so hearing from and listening to teachers has been, and will continue to be a top priority of this board. You know, expanding access for opportunities to students is another critical piece. You know, night school was not born in a moment. You know, that came from conversations where we recognized that we had a deficit of places for students to find success who were not being successful in the traditional space. We purchased K-Tech because it was important to us to preserve opportunities for students, again, for different, you know, just different pathways for students than a college-bound student. I wrote a few things here. We have universal free breakfast and lunch for students. We've committed to modernizing the middle school, preschool. We've affirmed the place that all students have here, regardless of their identity. We've added mental health supports at every opportunity. And I will stop talking because I will start to get a little bit emotional, but I just want to, again, I will say it publicly, we are sorry, we take responsibility, but also, you know, we are doing the work to make sure that our schools are successful and our students are safe.
Thank you. Ms. Cooper.
Hello. I first like to thank all the presenters that presented tonight. I do have more questions. Thanks, Karen, for your feedback. I do have a lot of concerns about the metal detectors, and I have a lot of questions. And I think that I would like to see in the next board meeting that some of those questions be flushed out. Because again, I think that with having those, it's going to affect African American and marginalized communities. And so I would like to see more evidence in reference to, I know that we talked a little bit about Louisa having it, but I would like to see the data of how long Louisa had it and what are some successes behind having them before making that purchase. Tonight was my first meeting, so I'm still learning. And I just thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Morris?
Yeah, excuse me. I'll just say, looking forward to all the new board members and working with you all. I think this was a fantastic first meeting, so thank you very much.
Ms. Burns?
Thank you. I am honored to be here. I've been a parent. I've been a PTO member, a board member of other organizations and community for a long time, and I do not take this role lightly. And I'm committed to the work, working with my colleagues, working with Dr. Gurley, to the continued success of Charlottesville City Schools. I want to personally thank the students at Charlottesville High School. I have been here. I've been volunteering in the halls, and I have seen the marked improvement. And I thank you, and I wish you could relay that to your student colleagues. And thank the staff for coming together, not just the admin staff, Dr. Gurley and his team, but the principals and the division leadership that came together and stepped into this space and said, you know, this is important work, and building relationships with our students is important work. And I think that's what we're doing. And I think having Mr. Leatherwood here and the APs that are currently in place and Dr. Johnson doing the great work that she's doing is really what's turning the tide for us here. And I am hopeful. I'm hopeful that we continue to do that work. I'm encouraged by the community partners that have continued to show up and are committed to doing the work. And I look forward to Mr. Kugler's written report on the metal detectors. I too am concerned about who that potentially affects and what that looks like in our community. And I really want to ensure that we have the right staff in place to do that work, should we decide to go that route, and that a greater conversation will be had surrounding that. And in regards to recruitment and retention, I am encouraged by the work that's being done to reach out to some of the HBCUs that are now listed on the report, and to make sure that we are being very intentional about who we're reaching out to, and mindful about recruiting teachers and staff that mimic our student demographic as well. So I appreciate the work being done there, and thank you all. Appreciate you.
Mr. Meyer?
Well, I'm going to try to be brief, but want to thank everybody for the opportunity. Appreciate the people who made the comments today. It was great, Mr. Hartline, to see you here recurrently. I will say, yeah, I'm a skeptic of the metal detectors. I look forward to learning more about them, but I think in my research I've done, I think there's other solutions. The only thing is, yeah, I would really like to understand better, kind of, again, what are the things we can do from a retention perspective? I think there's a lot of things we're doing now, but obviously and there's some things that are always gonna be out of our control. People are gonna leave because they relocate or they retire, et cetera. But the one things that we can control, what do we need to change in order to bump that up by 5%? And I understand money is some of it, and then some of it is always under control, but can we have some specific things, hopefully, that we can talk to the city about that would help us make that case? And finally, for the members of the public that are left, I think Ms. Torres and Ms. Dooley highlighted that we do talk to the city next week. So if there are things you want to see funded, I would hope that you might show up next week and to that meeting and say something. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Heavey?
Yeah, I don't want to keep you guys too long because I do have stats homework. unfortunately. No, but again, I wanted to thank you guys all for letting me be here. It means a lot that you guys are not only, giving me a spot to be here, but also prioritizing, student opinion and student voice in these new guys spots in your meetings and everything. I think, there are definitely greater conversations to be had when the new year comes. And I look forward to having them. Metal detectors are definitely something that I think needs to be talked about more. You know, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I completely agree with Ms. Cooper, Ms. Burns. It's as great as it is that Louisa County has implemented it. We are not Louisa County. We're actually very different from Louisa County demographically, psychologically in so many ways. And so I just think that's definitely a conversation that needs to be had, especially again with students who are the ones who are walking through them. And I know you'll continue to. So I really appreciate you guys giving me this space, and I really appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing. I want to make it clear that as someone in this building, it has gotten better. I want to put that out there. I want to put that out there because you guys, I recognize the work that you're doing. The work is recognized by so many people, and we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to, if I may, specific to the weapon detector system, I mean, that was something that was brought to the prior board in a work session and discussed. And I would like to ask that potentially we can provide a space and some time to discuss that potentially. And I don't know if we have, but I think there's probably some data from staff. But if we can find out if there's been a survey specific to that, or if you can pull numbers that staff have asked or stated that they would feel safer. So I don't know if that came up in any of the surveys. And then also considering student voice and maybe a survey. And I don't know that necessarily you need to take that on, but maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think we can talk about it. You can talk with Dr. Gurley and Mr. Leatherwood and Dr. Johnson and maybe how that might roll out. But I think I agree. I think those voices we need to hear and we need to consider. In full transparency, I had some questions about it, and I'm not tapped into a lot of the social media as far as what is seen by parents or staff and student social media, but there was some reference to just weapons being shown in social media and concern. And so I think that's a valid concern, but my question was, I've never heard that. And I think that's something, I don't know. So, I mean, honestly, if it's my vote that makes a decision as to whether or not there's a weapon detector at the door and God forbid something happens, I don't know that I could live with myself. So I'm very torn with this, but I think since we have a new board, I think that we, should hear voices and let everybody think about this and talk about it a little bit more. So I'd appreciate that. And I think everybody's nodding their head. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate all the comments from community members and the time that you've taken to state your concerns and share your opinions. So always appreciate that, appreciate the new board. Thank you. And we are here to support, and I look forward to working with all of you. And I think this has been a great meeting as well. I am going to just stop there and turn it over to Dr. Gurley. Thank you.
My comments are very brief. I just want to thank the public comments and I want to thank Mr. Hartline. I know he joins us regularly, and I do want you to know that we do hear you. We do, as we have our weekly meetings and as we consider what policies and regulations look like, we have those conversations with regards to what are people saying in public comment, and consider, how are our regulations, the board approves policy, but how are our regulations going to impact what happens at the school? So I do want you to know that we are listening and we do take those things into consideration. I want to thank our returning members, but also want to welcome our new members. I think our team has felt that you've trusted us to do the work. And I think as you all see, there's a lot that goes into making one decision. There's a lot of voices that we have to take into consideration, and many times hard decisions are made. And I think, as we continue to move forward, we've ended 23 talking about the air of transparency. And I think that I know we will continue to move forward with that air of transparency so that people are knowing where we're working from. And I think that as Ms. Torres concluded her statement, the weapons detectors, because we're not talking about metal detectors, the weapons detectors has been a very hot topic with regards to schools, but specifically Charlottesville High School. And I think that we can have a work session around it. I think one of the data pieces that we really want to take into consideration are how many weapons are being used in the commission of just infractions in the community. And so I think that those are things as we talk about who has access to weapons, and are those things readily available? I think that will kind of help to make the decision whether we go one way or we don't go that way. So we'll just continue to work through this process, and we'll use some data to inform our decisions. I appreciate Miss Little. I think she's been one of our biggest champions. And so another voice, we value all voices, but we know that people show up, and she's been doing our work through our PTO and through COOP. And so I appreciate her as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. I believe now we have Ms. Swift for the wrap up.
Okay, just to wrap up here, we had a couple of requests to provide the current CHS provide a behavior report compared to previous months. And then to also provide the safety, security, and communication update, and possibly include surveys that were mentioned a minute ago. And then there were a lot of questions around retention rates. And so would the board like to know how we compare, how our retention rates compare across the state? Would that be your?
I don't need that. It's the next time, like next month, but the next time there's a
Okay.
presentation on this next year, it would look great to have that context.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And now I have a long list of upcoming meetings. And I think Mr. Bryant read these last time, but so the meeting that we were referencing for next week, January 10th, is a city school board joint work session with city council. Again, this won't be our big budget meeting, just so you're clear on that. Okay, so we're going to start to present some ideas. I think we can talk about some other concerns that might impact funding, but this is not where we sit and present the superintendent's proposed budget recommendation.
Thank you for that clarification, Chair Torres, but will the public be able to participate?
It's a work session, so there's typically a public comment period. And yes, absolutely, people can send us emails and thoughts and ideas. That would be great. They can also reach out to City Council. We then on the 18th have a city school board budget work session, and that's where we will receive the superintendent's recommended changes to our next year's budget. That's at Walker. So both of those are at 5 o'clock at Walker Upper Elementary, just so you know. February 1st, we have a regularly scheduled school board meeting, 5 o'clock here. February 7th, we have another city school board joint work session with City Council. So this will be where we take that recommended budget and we're talking about proposed changes. And we'll dig into that a little bit more. And then the 15th, we have another work session. So we are going to spend a lot of great time together here in the next month or two. And then on the 22nd, we have a school board meeting where we will actually approve the superintendent's proposed budget. So that's a lot, but they're all in your calendar. And I just want to thank everybody again. And with that, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.